Oh, hello. How are you doing? Should we do the theme song? Let's see if the theme song's going to work. You haven't done that in a while, right? It's so annoying not to have the theme song play when it's supposed to, but my system has been wonky. Let's just give it a shot. Let's see what happens right about now.
Jeff is gonna talk about the Misfits right now. He's a nerd about this stuff, obsessed anyhow. Jeff never shuts his face, always needs to talk. Might miss him some weight if he went out for a walk. Do you think Danzig cares? He doesn't care. He's not into ranch.
I love that. I love it. We're back, baby. We're back. We're on the main computer. We're not on the cell phone tonight. I don't want to jinx it. It's still a little early. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. And Noodles has checked in. Noodles 1980, as always, checks in to let us know that an update about Bobby Steele's driving habits. Bobby Steele has finally lost his driver's license. The state took it away. We are all safe now. I hope that's not true. I hope Bobby can get wherever he needs to go to. I think he's a sailor now. He's always sailing on boats and whatnot. So, good for Bobby. Good for Bobby. Either way, welcome to tonight's show. We have a very special guest. I'm very excited to chat with him because he just seems like a really nice guy who's going to share some really fun stuff with us. Before I dive in, I just want to let you know, if you are a Patreon or a YouTube casualty member on YouTube, you can now watch the November Coming Fire listening party. This is the final listening party in our Samhain series. We've covered everything. So if you're a Patreon, go check it out. If you're a member on YouTube, you can check it out. And if you don't belong to either, what are you waiting for? Go and click on it and find out more information about how you too can be a Patreon listening to this stuff. For everybody else, it's going to drop on November 1st. Speaking of which, because of our guest tonight, our guest is in a band that is going to be putting on a show in Lodi at a VFW. I mean, this is crazy. If you had told me that this thing, which I didn't invent any of this stuff. I just, came up with this title. They came from Lodi, but that it was going to be used as like a moniker for, like a show in Lodi at a VFW. Like, I would say you're crazy, but it's happening, man. You got Robbie Bloodshed, Voice of Doom, and the Secret Subway, Tony Matura's Secret Subway. They are all going to be they're doing a show. You never know who's going to turn up. Who knows what's going to happen at this show? I don't. I can tell you I'm going to be at the show. I will be wearing a mask for sure, but I will be at this show. I'm the host. I'm emceeing. You know what I'm saying? I am emceeing. What's up, crazy white boy? How you doing? We got Droid Little in the house. What's going on? And of course, we got our friend Noodles, who's claiming that this is not true. This is just part of Noodles' shtick. That's what Noodles does. He's obsessed with Bobby Steele's driving, and it is what it is. Hey, speaking of Steele and speaking of Voice of Doom, as I just mentioned, that is my guest tonight. Is there is some Steele. Whoa! I see something's going on backstage behind the curtain, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it. It's great. It's great. Rue Morg's in the house. He says, "Don't you know a rumble ain't a rumble without me?" Frumess. Yeah, of course. Rue Morg is going to be there too. I'm so excited. We're going to have so much fun. It's going to be just, I think it's going to be an extension of the show. Really, truly. And yes, that's true. Thank you for reminding me, Chris. Chris is in the house. Chris, welcome to the show, as always. Glad to have you in the comments. It's true. Captain Kirk has actually gone to space. I'm not a fan of Jeff Bezos and his, mega corporate, whatever, bald-headed POS. But you want to know something? I love the fact that he sent Captain Kirk to outer space. That makes me happy. That's what he should have done all along. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So Noodles is he's really serious about this. Dude, the guy almost drove me off the road multiple times. So that's it. Listen, without further ado, because I'm sure it's getting hot behind the mask that is being worn, I'd like to introduce another Steele, a Steele by the name of John. John Steele from Voice of Doom is my guest tonight. Let's bring him on. Let's give him a nice, I don't know, we don't call it a Lodi welcome, but whatever. Frumess welcome. What's a Frumess welcome? I don't have a welcome. All right. Enough talk. Hey, let's go. Whoa! Ah! Oh my God! You scared the crap out of me with that. I was expecting to see John's face, and I saw a pumpkin, and I freaked out. Ah! What are you doing? Jeez, how you doing, John?
Good. What's up?
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You know what I see, guys? You know what I see right off the bat, right behind John? I mean, this is beautiful. Look at these boxes, my Lord.
I have a few.
You have a few. I mean, what are these? Now, hold on a second. Are these all variants? Like, is this like year by year that I'm seeing?
It's mostly like 70s and 80s. That's what I collect. Monster boxes. I have a lot more, but I only display the monsters.
So I too collect cereal boxes. This is I collect certain, but not, there's no rhyme or reason to it. I like, if I see art that really strikes me, I have to own it. So what I do is, I wonder if you do this too. I take the box and I take the cereal out. I eat the cereal, but I immediately fold up the box.
Yeah,
flat.
I do that. Well, my later ones I fold and put away.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I have a whole storage bin, like a storage facility bin, just filled up with all the collectibles that I can't display at home. But the older ones that I have here, they're all empty, but they might have been flattened at one time. But I try to keep them, regular, so they don't lose their shape or anything. I don't have to tape them back together there.
So I do.
Some of them I have in, which you might see. Some of them I have in some protective plastic to keep them safe.
Oh, I don't see protective plastic, but they do. One thing that I do see that they're all lined flush. I have in a part of my cave over here. What I do is I take my boxes and I eat the cereal, but then I stuff the boxes with cardboard and paper so that there's something inside.
I have some packing peanuts or some bubble wrap in some of them.
That's good. Packing peanuts. That's a good one.
Yeah, it helps. It helps keep the shape. That's some real nerd shit right off the bat, isn't it?
It is. And Rebel Punk 13 says, as a huge Misfits nerd, this channel rules. And that's and Chris is asking, did I get the Monster Mash cereal? I sure did.
Yeah, you have to. It's really not. It's really kind of bad. I don't like
it's always all of it's bad. It's not good
it's
cereal.
It's not the way it used to be. It used to be a lot better. And I'm sure cereal heads will tell you that, like, since they changed the recipe, none of it is the same. I still love Count Chocula. That's always been my favorite. But the recipe's not the same. But I have to buy it every year. And, my wife likes it. My kids like it. We have to every Halloween we all eat a bowl of Boo Berry or Count or Frank. My wife prefers Frankenberry.
But that's literally what happens. You eat a bowl of it, and you're like, okay, I ate the bowl, and I have all this extra cereal, and half the time, I don't even finish the cereal. You want to hear
something funny? The guy who owns our studio, where we do a lot of our recording, Kevin Lacatina, Homebrew Studio. There's a shameless plug. He loves Monster cereal too, but first of all, he doesn't use milk. He just eats it dry out of the box.
That's cool.
Right?
I'm down with that.
But what he's such a nerd with this kind of stuff, and I love him for it, is that he will take 2 boxes. Yeah. And he will pick the marshmallows out of one box and put them in the other, so he gets double the amount of marshmallows when he reaches his hand in there. That's
so wonderful. Like that, they now sell. I mean, for years you can get this. There's a market for it too, but they sell just the marshmallows. You can even order special order.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know specifically with the Monster cereals, but like you can just get Lucky Charms marshmallows now.
I didn't know that.
Well, you used to be able to. You actually had guys going in, buying cereal, picking them out, and then you could buy the marshmallows in bulk on like eBay.
Oh, wow.
But now they've commercially, like Lucky Charms, General Mills, they actually package
That's
the
kind of
cereal.
gross if you think about it. Some stranger sticking his hand in there and then selling it.
I mean, like, there's a market. Well, I'm sure maybe they're wearing rubber gloves. You know, there's a market. John, there's a market for everything.
Yeah,
these
I guess
days.
so. I guess so.
If you want it, if you can think of it, they're going to do it. And, you know, that's the thing. I love
to them if they can do it.
Exactly. And I really love strange, weird food and junk food. That's another sort of obsession of mine. I don't collect the packaging, but it's like I have to try one. I have to try like one of everything, you know?
Yeah. There's so, you know, I have a lot of snack, which you'll see. I have a lot of vintage snack cake boxes and just like regular snack stuff.
Yeah.
The candy stuff, it's kind of hard to collect because, you know,
you can't.
It's just, you can't display them. You have to kind of put them in something. You know, there's so much. I actually know a guy from Queens. I haven't seen him in a long time, but he has a candy collector website, and he's really good at that stuff, like all the way back to like the 60s and 70s with the packaging.
Wow. So how does he preserve that stuff?
He probably puts it in like plastic bags, or, you know, puts them in like photo album type stuff to preserve them that way. I haven't seen him in probably 15 years, so I don't know how he's doing it these days, but I would imagine that was what he did.
You know what the problem is at the end of the day, and it's like something that you just spoke to, and this is the problem with collecting. You know, it's the same philosophy. All right, stay with me here for a minute. Bear with me with what I'm going to say. It's the same philosophy as when you order a consumer good. Like, let's say you order something off of Amazon, whatever, a humdinger, a remote, something, just anything, a pair of headphones. The product is only as good as its weakest part. If the weakest part is really bad and it breaks, the whole sort of thing loses its functionality. And that's the analogy that I then want to plug into. Collections are only as good as the space that you have to house them in a weird kind of way. Like, if you don't have a space, then you just have your stuff sitting in boxes. And like, the ultimate tragedy for any collector is, you know, part of the collection is being able to look at it. It's like, maybe like it's like this, maybe it's the way our brains are wired, like a little OCD. Like, I love seeing everything and the variance of color, and everything's like aligned here and there, that kind of thing. But you're only as your collection is directly predicated or related to the space that you have to display it. Otherwise, it's in storage, right?
Well, I know people that are like that too. Like, they immediately get something, they flatten it, they wrap it, they put it away, and they basically kind of forget about it. But in their mind, they know they have it if they ever want to go to it. Like, they want to have it, but they don't want to see it. Some people are like that too.
Right.
It's weird. Like, some people
out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind, and in the back of their minds, they know they have it, and if they ever want to go to it. And some people have so much stuff that they love to dig for it. Like, don't you have so and so? Yeah, I think I got that somewhere.
Right.
But I'd have to. I gotta look. I don't know where it is.
And then they get to remember. They get to look through and remember what they have. And yada yada yada.
Something they may have forgotten, and then
good point.
The fun is in the hunt sometimes. You know.
I can get down with that. Why don't you show it? Take us on a little tour. Let's see what you got going on here in this man cave.
All right.
Whatever you can divulge. Let's see, because it looks like you got some...
It's kind of hard to see what I'm looking at here behind me, but this is a lot of the Count, Frank, and Booberry.
Yeah. And I see the variance in packaging. You really, you collect.
It starts off with the original ones from the early 70s, what they call the holding spoon.
Yeah.
With the big face they call it.
Oh my God, you really know your shit. Wow.
And then there was a small series like this, which this one is in a plastic. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, There's a
small series called Holding Spoon, where you see the big cereal, you see his body, but he's holding the spoon. They only did that for a couple of a very short period of time, and then it goes to the traditional pouring milk. That's what they call it.
Oh my God!
You know, so there's actually 3 variants, And it goes the same with, I don't think I have a Frank. I have a Blueberry. I don't know if you can see. Am I pointing to it? I got the phone in front of me.
I no, well, yeah, I see Blueberry, but it's like kind of out of.
How's
Yeah,
that?
I can see. No, I can see it. We can
Yeah,
see
he's
part
holding.
of it.
This is
Part of it. I can't see what he's holding, but I can see just the berry part. Oh, now I can see it. Very good. Yeah.
They call that's holding spoon. So those are really rare. The holding
Really?
spoon, the holding spoon, what they call it, that series is very rare.
Now, I remember back in 2014, I bought 10 boxes with the new that's when they reintroduced Yummy Mummy and Fruit Brute.
Yeah.
They had the updated cartoon versions that are just super lame, and then they had the retro ones, and I bought one of each.
Oh yeah, I have them all.
They're great.
It continues over here.
Oh my Lord.
Blueberry, Fruit Brute.
Yep, Yummy Mummy.
And Yummy Mummy.
Oh, and it's great.
That's the pack. That's like the snack cake packaging and stuff I was telling you about.
You know what else is great too? The
kinds of various
Halloween Crunch, Captain Crunch's Halloween Crunch.
Oh yeah, I just finished it off. I just finished
and that's a good cereal
and there's
too.
There's my Monster Mash.
Yeah, you got the Monster Mash. I decided, you know, I don't know, John. You might actually really enjoy this on my channel. Shameless plug on my own channel. How about that? On my channel, I review cereal. I have a thing called Cereal Killer.
Yeah. I've seen some of them.
Oh, okay. So so for anybody who's into cereal, like reviews and cereal, I do a whole cereal review series. I'm doing one on Monster Mash because I had to buy the box.
Good one.
So.
There's a good one called Cereal Time. It's a guy named Gabe Fonseca from Los Angeles.
Cool. I'll check it out.
I've done some trading with him. Yeah, he's pretty good with that kind of stuff too. Just real quick before we go back to talking, there's
please.
Do you see all that?
Yeah, now I see it. Look at that Misfits collection. Look at that. All originals, I assume.
No comment.
No comment. Okay, fair enough.
Some of them yes, some of them no.
You know what? I don't have originals. My collection is some of it's bootlegs. Look at that Voice of Doom in the Chiller. You did the Chiller backdrop. That's
the Chiller
awesome.
Hand. Yeah. We're gonna hang that outside the VFW that night. That's gonna be.
Oh, that's great.
You know.
That is great with the 6 fingers. Chiller. Look at that. 3 hits. EF board. I see. That's a really nice room. And let me ask you this, John.
One last thing.
Oh yeah, show us. Go ahead. Oh yeah. Cough Cool promo. So that promo, the master for that promo, that is where the Misfits logo comes from. It was written. That was the first time he wrote it like that, and then transponded it on everything. So it comes from that Cough Cool.
Can you see me okay?
Yeah, you look good.
All right, cool.
You're good. It's nice to have the box in the background. Yeah. What is it to have to sit in what is it about us that like to just sit in a basement surrounded by all the things that make us happy?
It's for people like us that are into this kind of stuff. It's like, I know some guys that have all like New York Giants or New York Yankees memorabilia in their man cave, but for like musicians or people involved in this kind of stuff, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have. It's nice to have a room where it's just all your stuff and you can just, like right now I got Halloween 2 on.
Yeah, Samhain. Do you agree? I know we're about to jump really out of order here. Do you agree with that being the impetus, the inspiration for Glenn Danzig?
I don't think so. I mean,
really?
From the movie, I doubt if it was from the movie.
I think that's when his obsession with the notion began.
I mean, it could have been. It could have been. I mean, I saw the movie, long before the band. So if that's where he got it from, I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to me. It's awesome.
I think it's great too. I just always, you know what it is? It came out in '81, and it just seems like like in kind of like the timeline, of things. It kind of like. It's like the word Samhain. That's like the first time that you see it in any kind of mainstream way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you want to know what Samhain is before 1981, you probably need to be watching super obscure horror movies, if that, or you need to be in a library reading about that stuff, which is very possible that Glenn was reading in a library. But I think that he was reviewing movies for Flipside magazine, or he was just going to every horror movie and saw Samhain written in blood and was like, that's cool. And then
it's a good name for a band.
Research.
I'm going to store that away in the memory bank somewhere and use it someday.
Maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Nobody knows. But that's
I think somebody
theory.
asked him that one time in an interview. I think I remember reading that, or maybe I don't remember, and I don't really remember what his response was. I think he just kind of explained what the whole festival.
He wouldn't admit it. He wouldn't admit it.
He wouldn't admit it.
He wouldn't admit it, even if it was.
For some, I mean, we all borrow from somewhere. So
of course,
he borrowed a lot and could have borrowed that too.
Dude.
I mean, I took Voice of Doom, the name Voice of Doom, believe it or not, from, I mean, some people have asked me like, oh, is it like Hand of Doom, like Black Sabbath? And I'm like, no, if I told you where it came from, you probably wouldn't believe it. I don't know if you're a big Honeymooners fan at all.
I mean, I know who they are, but
okay. Well, there was an episode. If you're not familiar with the Honeymooners, Ralph Cramden, Ed Norton, and the wives. One time, Norton's wife was shouting for him, and he turns around and he says, "Oh, there she is, the voice of doom."
That's great.
So I kept that up here, to use, and that's it.
You know what's interesting? Actually, it's kind of like what he does with stuff and music is kind of like what Quentin Tarantino does with movies. Like, it's the same sort of thing. It's like he takes things that he takes all the stuff that he thinks is really cool and kind of remixes it and sort of puts it through his own prism,
Yeah.
Not to say that he's not, look, we endlessly talk about how a band like Samhain is steeped in originality, which is true, especially sonically. But I just mean in the sense that, like, we, all of us nerds, like, snooping around and being like, oh, this hand is from this comic book, and this, just that he, takes from stuff. That's my brother calling. We'll just put my phone on silent.
It's interesting you said about sonically, like, I was very surprised to hear the, like, Initium and Unholy and stuff like that. When I saw them live for the first time, I saw them 3 times. When I saw them live for the first time, the difference was, it was like night and day. And I know at the time Glenn was listening to, like, a lot of, like, stuff like Alien, Sex Fiend, in the early to mid 80s. And that stuff was kind of, I don't know if he was kind of going for a sound like that, but the studio that they recorded at, Real Platinum, I actually recorded there once with a friend of mine that asked me to play drums with him. And I don't know how much you've ever delved into, Bob Aleka. Yeah. I mean, his studio was he was a nice guy, and I only met him one time, but he was really not used to recording rock music. He did a lot of, like, dance type stuff. And he was one of those guys, from what I remember, and I was like 17 at the time. I remember he wanted to be one of those guys that put his own personal sound to things. Like, you listen to Initium, you hear the tom-toms, and the drums sound electric. Now, maybe Glenn wanted it that way, to go for a certain sound, but I think the stuff that was coming out of that studio, what Bob was hearing and the way he was recording it and processing it, had a lot to do with that. But when I saw them live, with Marshall amplifiers and stuff, it was very powerful. It was a big difference from the records. The songs, even, the delivery of the songs, like, the guitars were always kind of buried. Even on a lot of the Misfits, like
a lot of it's buried.
A lot of it's buried. To finally hear it loud, coming through a stack, was like, wow, this sounds so much better than the record.
It's a shame.
That was a big thing for me.
It's a shame that we've never gotten proper remixes of any of that stuff, because this is my personal taste. I think I'm not a fan of any the mix of anything Glenn Danzig related. I always feel like it's never mixed in a way that it could always be mixed better. Maybe that's a better way to put it. I just think, and again, when you look at like Misfits stuff, all of it is a bedrock. It's just bedrock for the voice, right?
Yeah.
So what does it matter if it's all down, muddled in a mix? Like it's just, in his, and probably in his mind, I don't know because I'm not Glenn Danzig, but maybe in his mind it's just like, yeah, it's the voice, and then the music is under the voice, and whatever.
It could be. I mean, also it could be the recording equipment. I know that they were always pressed for time, had to come in under a budget. Some people like myself over the years would say, okay, I'm going to spend a day recording the drums and seeing how they sound, or I'm gonna try a mic here on the Marshall, and then you know what, I'm gonna move the amp to another part of the room and I'm gonna see how it sounds there. Like, if you're just gonna go in bing bang boom, I gotta knock out 5 songs, which I've also done. Sometimes what you come out with is that's it, and here it is, which isn't necessarily a bad thing either, because it's not, you don't toil over it for days, and you lose the inspiration, and it's like the excitement, the intensity, the immediacy of it sometimes could get lost if you go over it too much.
Two things
that also could be.
2 things. One, I'm not a musician. I always make this disclaimer. So I honestly don't know that process. And that makes so much sense to me, what you're saying. Like, that makes sense. Like, you go in, it's like you all of these things that sort of, all of these variables that maybe one doesn't think about, like when you're on a budget and you're trying to nail out your songs, you don't really have time to, as you said, you don't have time to check these things out. And the second thing I was going to say, oh shit, I already forgot it. It literally went out my other ear because I was trying to hold it in my head. That's what I get for not listening.
But you know what?
Yeah.
But seriously though, like, one thing that, like, talk about the Static Age record, right?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we've all heard the stories about how they had X amount of time to go in and record that. Even though the record, to me, sonically sounds very flat and one-dimensional, I think the recording of it is probably, besides Earth AD, which is totally overblown, the Static Age recording is my favorite, because it just sounds...
It sounds the best.
It sounds very real to me. Like Mr. Jim's drums. That's the way the drums probably sounded in the studio. They didn't throw a bunch of shit on it. They didn't try to make it sound big. The studio was probably pretty good. But hey, we're here from midnight to 7 a.m. or whatever, a couple of days or whatever it was, and this is it. They didn't spend a lot of time trying to build stuff up, or and I think Glenn played guitar on some of that stuff, because Frenchie didn't know all the songs, but it just
that's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yeah, to me it just, I think that was on the Misfits Central website when it kind of broke down the sessions, like that that Frenchie was kind of new in the band and he didn't know all the songs yet, so Glenn had laid another guitar track down. And if you listen to the outtakes at the end of the Static Age CD, you can hear like 2 guitars going. Did you ever listen? You've listened to
no,
those?
I totally have, but I've never.
Like,
I never thought about that.
You hear Glenn whisper into the mic, like, I'm going to try sitting down on this one because I'm not doing well standing up, and you hear like a guitar noise.
But I always thought that was his singing. He sang all of Static Age sitting down in a chair. It's my understanding.
I didn't know. But you could in some of the outtakes you hear one guitar stop and the other one keeps going. So I was like, were they doing it live? Was Glenn playing along with it?
Interesting.
I always wondered that. It's never been confirmed, but that's That's what I've heard.
Right.
What I've read.
I'm trying to remember what the second thing that I was going to say. We're talking about mixing. You're talking about all the constraints of going in there and recording, and maybe it was something about Bob Aleka's studio and the way that he recorded.
It was Bob Aleka's studio was in a basement, and I don't remember if it was tape or if it was the beginning of digital recording.
Yeah.
But I do remember going in there, and he had a little drum set kind of set up in the corner, and he had a little control room, and like the drums sounded okay, but then when my friend played me back what he recorded, I'm like, this doesn't sound like. And then I'm just thinking to myself, well, that was the first time I was ever in a studio, so I'm like, all right, maybe that's just the way it comes out. Like, I didn't know any better. or maybe
Right.
that's just the way Bob wanted it to sound, and that's the way it came out. Because a lot of engineers that I've noticed that I've worked with over the years, a lot of engineers feel like they want their studio to have a signature sound based on the equipment
Right.
they have, and for popularity of themselves. Oh, Bob Aleka recorded this. It sounds great. I
Like
want to go
Sound
there.
Studios, like the mixing desk at Sound Studios.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, even stuff um, like when we go to Kevin's and record. Like Kevin has everything VOD was recorded at Homebrew Studios, and the first time many years ago that I had gone in there with another band, you kind of feeling your way through, and how does he work, and is he open to our ideas? Does he want to? Is it my way or the highway? But as you go over time, you can do it in your sleep. Like, okay, he's going to use a 57 or a 421 on the amp. The drums are going to be here, this and that, and then after a while, it's like it's a no-brainer. It's just plug and play, and it's going to sound great because you've done it so many times with the same person.
Right.
He knows your sound rather than him trying to make you sound the way he wants you to. That's the difference between some engineers. Some engineers, I want it to sound my way, and some engineers are like, you do it and I'll capture it.
All right. So now take me back. Let's go. Let's start when you're in high school or whatever. How do you get exposed to all this music? Are you seeing like signs of it around as you go ahead?
Yeah.
Take me through it.
Well, when I was a freshman in high school, I joined my first. I'm sorry, sophomore in high school. I joined my first real band. Okay. And I was 14 or 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to a technical county high school. So I know Haim had mentioned this to you. His friend Dave Lobel, played drums in a band called Distorted Youth. And some of those guys went to my high school. So in the early 80s, there was kids from Garfield, Lodi, Hasbrook Heights, Elmwood Park, and you'd see Misfits shirts. These kids wearing Misfits shirts, like the original Misfits shirts that, you could never find today. And if they were, they'd be, I was like, oh, you're seeing all this imagery like Night of the Living Dead. And it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like I hadn't heard of that. I haven't heard of them before. This is the first time I'm seeing it. And Sand in the Face was from Hasbrook Heights. Distorted Youth. Morning Noise was also from Lodi, which came from, hearing about the Misfits.
Right.
There's, my friend plays in Morning Noise, and then his friend plays in Rosemary's Babies. These are all older guys, but they're all guys that I'm coming in contact with. And I remember asking Frankie Fender, who's almost 10 years older than me, who was the guitar player in my first band and is still the other guitar player in Voice of Doom. I asked him, I said, have you ever heard of the Misfits? And he says, yeah, I saw them. I'm like, oh, which actually he saw them. I think he saw them at Hitsville with
nice.
Flag, like on that Christmas. He saw the
81.
He saw the original Undead. He saw Flag, a bunch of times. The Cramps back in the day, and he would take me to Bleecker Bob's, on Bleecker Street in New York, and the first Misfits record that I saw was Earth AD. And they had broken up by then, obviously, when Earth AD. This was 83 at this point.
This would have to have been, and again, you're talking
late
to a
83.
guy who was not even alive, but to date myself, this would have to have been December of 1983.
Probably something like that, or early 84.
Okay. Okay.
Excuse me. So that was the first one I saw, and I loved the artwork, and it scared me looking at it.
Right.
I was like, wow, okay, Misfits, I'm going to buy it. Took it home, listened to it, and it was as soon as Earth AD started, I was like, wow, this is scary. Like I hadn't heard a scary sounding record since when I was a kid and I heard the first Black Sabbath album.
Wait, so that's your first song, your first Misfit song. Sorry to cut you off. Your
Earth
first
AD.
Misfit song is literally Earth AD.
Earth AD. First Misfit song I had ever heard.
I love it.
Okay. So now and I love the record, and I know Haim,
right.
and you have talked about this, and that and Static Age are my two favorite Misfits albums, and they couldn't be more different.
So different.
I worked backwards with the Misfits. I heard Earth AD first, and then Walk Among Us, and the singles and stuff. And there was a lot of tape trading in high school with these kids. I heard Morning Noise for the first time, which I want to talk about. When Morning Noise played on WFMU in 1982 on my birthday with AOD, who was from a lot of guys.
I know AOD.
Right. So that was my early exposure to that kind of stuff, and then I heard about Rosemary's Babies, which was Erie's first band, and that's how I kind of got exposed to that. All because I went to high school with these kids that were from Lodi and Garfield and stuff like that, and they had friends who were in these bands. Their older brothers' friends, or they were friends with them because they were all older than us.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You went to the same school that Glenn Danzig went to at one
Bergen
point
Tech.
in time.
Yeah,
right.
I think he graduated in 1971, I guess.
Something like that.
I didn't know at the time. I didn't find that out until many, many years later.
Right.
But I don't think he didn't go to Lodi High School. My sister actually went to Lodi High School. I lived in Lodi as a kid.
Gotcha.
My sister was a year or so. She kind of knew some of the older siblings of them, or friends or aunts or cousins. My sister's quite, a little bit older than me. So she kind of knew some of the family names, like the Caiaphas and the Angelones and stuff like that. But she never knew any of them personally.
So but it's, it's funny, much like Liverpool, even today, you go to Liverpool and, you talk to anybody on the street and they'll be like, oh yeah, my cousin's uncle's daughter is once rode a bus with Paul McCartney. Like everybody is connected to the
6
Beatles.
degrees
even
separation of Kevin Bacon or whatever.
Right. Even decades afterwards, the lore of Liverpool is my uncle, my best friend's cousin.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing kind of with Lodi, like in the sense of like there's always some 6 degrees.
Yeah.
Connection, which is fun,
Even a place, and it's funny because once I started hearing about that kind of stuff, it clicked with me because when I was younger, my father would take me to Cardi's Sugar Bowl in
Great
Lodi.
place.
I'm sure have you ever been?
Benson. Oh yeah,
Benson,
I've interviewed Benson.
He was a young man then.
He went to high school with Jerry's dad.
Okay. So, and there was Misfits posters there from back then.
3 Hits from Hell on the ceiling.
Still on the ceiling.
Yeah, still there to this day.
I think the Ritz poster is still there.
Yes, the 4 Horsemen from Captain Clegg.
And then I was like, wow, all right, now I remember where I saw all this. I saw them at Cardi Sugar Bowl as a kid. And then I put 2 and 2 together, and I'm like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Every once in a while I'll go to Cardi's. And
such a great place.
I've asked him so many times, like, how many people have offered to buy these posters off?
I asked him the same question too. He's so tired of that.
He'll never sell them. He'll just
he never
sell
would.
them.
He's got that John Lennon. That John Lennon posters up there too. When John Lennon died.
Wouldn't it be great? And I said to my wife this one day, because we talked, because my wife is from Garfield originally, so I'd say like, I'm like, how do you think he makes a living selling candy? And then
he owns the property,
he owns
probably
the building,
right?
And, it's like he probably has renters and tenants and stuff, and
it pays for the electricity.
I'm like, how great would it be to one day just buy that building and just leave it the way it is and make it like a monument to Lodi?
Not just a monument, but how about this? Imagine. All right, this is really getting nuts here. Okay, just run with me for this. Imagine turning Cardi Sugar Bowl into a venue. Not that the town of Lodi would ever allow it, but like, and not to gut Cardi's itself, but like, I don't know, maybe somewhere else in the building that, on an upper floor or something, that you could have like a small venue, like a, Cardi, that's the name of the venue. The
Cardi's.
Venue is like the Mabuhay Gardens, the Cardi Sugar Bowl. You know what I mean?
Just imagine imagine if there was a live band playing up there, that ceiling would probably crumble.
Oh, it would. Yeah.
It would just
the sound. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's just, it's just like, like I said, you had to just roll with me on that one.
Yeah, that's cool. No, that's I never thought of that. That's actually, I look at it like, oh, that would be great to like own the building and just collect rent from everybody. Which yeah, I think I remember reading somewhere in an interview with him that everything is like earmarked for his daughter or his
good,
something like that. Like
as it should be.
One day,
as
all this will be yours, type of thing.
That's cool. It's funny. When I interviewed him, I asked him. I was like, "Can you tell me about the day that JFK died? What that was like?" And because at the time I had plans to like this interesting juxtaposition idea, but just this idea, this notion of like what this sort of single or what the idea of making a song like Bullet about a day that is essentially like the 9/11 of the 60s, or at least one of them, right? And that was very interesting to hear him talk about it like that, talk about the day that JFK was shot.
Are you a JFK assassination?
No, not at all. Just in relation to.
I thought we were going to have something else to click on because I'm huge into the JFK assassination.
I will tell you this. I don't want to. I don't want to tangent on this, but I will say one thing. I was watching The Irishman. Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. And I just very matter of factly, in The Irishman, they're like, they basically it's insinuated that the mob is responsible for JFK, dying.
That's one theory.
But I think it's, you're familiar with the term Occam's razor, right?
Occam's razor, yeah.
Occam's razor. Thank you. Sorry, I've been mispronouncing it all these years. Occam's razor.
I guess
right?
It could be that there's probably no right or wrong, but okay.
Oh, Occam's razor, tomato, tomato. I think the most realistic explanation is, the mob helped JFK get into office, however that was, right? That's a fact. Okay.
Yeah.
So the mob wanted to be left alone, and now JFK's brother is the attorney general, and he's sticking his nose in the mob's business, and the mob doesn't like it. And the mob at that time is not the mob that it is today. It was way more powerful.
There is no mob. It's all made up.
So fine. There's no whatever. I don't know anything about the mob. My point is though, it's way more powerful and big, and RICO hasn't happened yet.
Well, yeah, and not to mention that they were in cahoots with the CIA to try to get Castro out of Cuba so they could get all their casinos back. There was so much going on. When you start researching this type of stuff, it's a rabbit hole that once you go down,
I'm sure
it's very hard to get out. It is a lot of it is true, and it's very interesting if you're into that kind of stuff.
I just personally think that, like, I don't know why it's such a conspiracy theory. I think it's just a very matter of fact cause and effect. He fucked with the mob, and the mob was like, what's the one thing? You want to like solve any problem in the world? Keep the mob from being able to make its money. You know what I'm saying? They'll figure out a way to get anything done if it's getting in the way of their profits. And
let's put it this way: once you know the facts of certain things, he had a lot of enemies, and it could have been any of them. It could have been the big.
Oh no. I don't know what just happened to John. He just dropped out. Robbie, same thing. Bobby Kennedy assassination, the Booby Kennedy assassination, same thing, dude. He was the AG. Here we go. He's coming back now. That was so weird. You just dropped out.
Thought maybe the mob cut me off.
The mob, they knew what was going on.
Maybe I'm next.
They knew what was going on. I can't keep up with these comments. We got so many people in the chat. This is very. Man, really cooking here, guys.
When you start to read and watch and listen and learn about the military-industrial complex, Kennedy wanted to pull all the troops out of Vietnam. He didn't want to go to war in Southeast Asia. But as anybody will tell you, once you start reading about this stuff, what's the biggest moneymaker in the world is the war. No war, no money. Not just quoting JFK, but it's very true. And he pissed a lot of people off. He was the first Catholic president. He was the only president at the time that wasn't born in the 19th century. You know, he was a 20th century president, which, you know, before that with Eisenhower and, you know, they were all old guys. He was a progressive young Catholic from the North. And
all I'm saying
a lot
is,
of people off.
Yeah, exactly my point, and we can leave it there because otherwise we'll just go down this rabbit hole.
Oh,
my point just simply is,
forget it.
I'm sure you could. My point simply is that I don't see what the big deal is. I think I was, you know, a lot of people weren't fans of The Irishman, but, you know, I think something that they really nailed on the head is just like, yeah, he's fucking with their money. Of course he's gonna get whacked. He got whacked. I mean, like, it's just like, yeah, like, you don't mess with the mob, dude. Like, it's just, even a president, like, you know, it's just, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
But to go back, okay, so we're talking about Cardi Sugar, but we're talking about listening to Earth AD for the first time. And if you can remember, and this was a while ago, but if you can remember, because these are the types of moments where, like, they create deep grooves in our brain matter, right? Like, we just remember them. What is your feeling? What is your sort of, like, you've seen the images and now you're hearing what those images are supposed to sound like? What's going on for you?
That's a good question. At the time, I was listening to a lot of hardcore because it was right in the, you know, in the thick of the hardcore. I went to CBGB's Hardcore Matinee.
Right.
So I liked fast music. So I was like, oh, it's a scary hardcore. It's a scary sounding hardcore band. And the song lyrics were like, you couldn't understand the lyrics and there was no lyric sheet, but the titles, you know, Blood Feast, Hellhound, that was right in my wheelhouse, being such a horror fan, you know. And like I said, when I first saw it, I remember, I'll never forget the kid's name. His name was Charlie Steinberg, and he was from Hasbrook Heights, and he wore a white Night of the Living Dead shirt. Wow. And when I saw that, I was like the movie, The Misfits. Like I was like, okay, this is. I have one of those. An original one? Yes, hand colored by Glenn Danzig. Wow. You didn't go to high school with me, did you? I didn't. I'll tell you sometime about how I got it for free. Crazy story, but interesting. Neither here nor there. Well, keep going. Well, yeah, when I first saw that, I was like, wow, okay, this is tying in two things together that are important to me. Like, at the time, very fast music, although I liked all kinds of music, but at the time I was really into hardcore and the horror stuff. So I was like, all right, this is great, you know. And just I really, like, aesthetically, it was, even though the cover was very, you know, I met Mad Mark Rudin, you know, at one point. And you met him? Yeah. Oh my God, what was that like? Just met him for a second. Wow. When Scott Wilkins was singing for Electric Frankenstein in the 90s, he was at one of our shows. And I just got to meet him for a brief moment. And even though the covers were confusing, like, there's a lot going on here, a lot to take in, like, you know, but I know people love the covers and the artwork, and I do too. You know, I love it, and it was scary as fuck to me as a kid. But the lettering of the song titles on the back in the corner was so simplistic to me that I loved it. Like, I loved looking at it, the way it was laid out, just the block, the capital letters, the block lettering in white. And then, you know, Glenn Danzig vocals, Jerry Only bass, Doyle guitar, Robo drums, engineered by Spot. Like, I was like, wow, that's straight to the point. You know, no special thanks to blah, 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 and recorded at blah, blah, blah. Like, I had seen so much that I was like, wow, this is like, it gave me all the information that I needed to know in a quick second. And I was great with it. Like, I loved the way it was laid out. Just Hellhound, Blood Feast, Devil Lock, Queen Wasp, you know what I mean? Like, it just was very immediate to me, and it just artistically, it just kind of spoke to me. I don't think I've ever met anybody else that appreciated that part of it. And I don't know if you have, but I'm not an artist. I have great admiration for artists. Like, you know, Haim is a brilliant artist, and so was, you know, Erie and Glenn. He's also really good at Photoshop and layout. I mean, the dude is a genius. We'll get to him, but just to finish real quick, go ahead. And, just like the label on the record, when you looked at the record and it was like the same artwork from the cover on the label and that same lettering, like, I just really liked it. I liked the aesthetic quality of it. And it was, I had never heard a record that sounded like that before. It just sounded scary. Like it frightened me, and we're all attracted to things that frighten us,
of course.
That's, and that's what kind of drew me in. And then I started seeing some of the other ones, some of the other singles and stuff. And, as crudely as they may have looked, they just had something to them that was very appealing to me,
Right.
And so that was and then after later I'd gotten the German pressing, which had Die Die My Darling and We Bite and Mommy, so I had to have both of them, which I got them. And then I got, then later on I got the 12-inch, the Die Die 12-inch and stuff. I tried to collect as much as I could. So that was Earth AD was my first, and I always thought it was kind of cool because it was Earth AD / Wolf's Blood. Like it was two.
It's a double EP.
Yeah, it's a double EP, and nobody ever refers to it nobody ever says Misfits.
They think of
Wolf's
it's an
Blood.
album. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an album. But then once I forget who pointed it out to me.
Kind of blows your mind.
But I was like, I never looked at it like that before.
Yeah.
Like, it was a double EP. But yet
one EP is Wolf's Blood and one EP is Earth AD.
Right,
and
but we never think, and I never saw them separate. I never saw just Wolf's Blood by itself or just Earth AD by itself. So I never related that till somebody pointed it out to me.
Right.
And nerd kind of shit. The more you investigate and you look and you ask and you talk and you think and you bring up your own conspiracy theories sometimes.
Oh, I do that all the time. All the time. I always put a disclaimer that I don't know if I know what I'm talking about, but I always love. And here's a great one. Here's a great hot take that I can't take credit for it. That Earth AD is actually sort of, not that they thought of this at the time, but in retrospect is kind of like a concept album. And that Earth AD is really one song in 9 parts, that it's like,
I never looked at it like
that. Yeah, that it's one continuous song about, hell on earth.
What happens after what happens after a great apocalypse or something.
Right, after Doomsday. So it's one song divided into 9 parts. Now if you say, okay, well, what do those parts mean? Nothing. I'm just saying that if you think about the aesthetic feel, because here's the thing, and again, we could talk about this probably until we're blue in the face. No matter what it was supposed to sound like, because we can go on and on. Oh, it's supposed to be slow. Oh, it's supposed to be like Samhain. Oh, it's supposed to be breakneck speed, hardcore, blah, 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 blah. Well, Jerry and Doyle had influence there. Oh, no, Glenn was sleeping. Whatever the case was, all of those songs are sound and are mixed kind of uniformly together.
Yes.
Along with that, the concept, if there is a concept, and there's not, but I'm saying that if you were to retroactively think of it as a concept album, is just simply the juxtaposition of those songs with that cover. The cover is the visual both covers really are the visual representations of that. And that's it.
Yeah, the record sounded like the covers, the back and the front cover. It was like a complete package to me.
Yep.
And that's that's what I loved about it, is that it looked scary, it sounded scary, and it's a lot of shit going on, which is when you really like break it down, like, oh, is it supposed to be Robo in the corner? Is that Doyle in the middle?
The Evil Dead. There's Ash's sister from the Evil
Crimson
Dead.
Ghost is in there somewhere.
Yep.
Kind of copied, to kind of segue a little bit.
Go ahead.
On the Rosemary's Babies record, the way they did the collage of everybody. Was it
Walk Among Us too?
Was it patterned after that? And was it patterned after Walk Among Us? Was it patterned after Earth AD? Was it their take on it? Like they were fans of it and they wanted to make their record kind of look that way. Another record that along at that same time period that I discovered and I loved it. I loved it. Do you have the Rosemary's Babies, the Bloodlust EP?
I have it digitally. I don't have I have like a ripped version. I don't have the vinyl.
Yeah.
I think it holds the record for the for the most songs fit on a single 7-inch.
Yeah, I would
How
definitely
many
say
songs?
I think there's like, is there maybe like 14 songs or something?
It's crazy. It is really
15 songs.
It is really, really crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, there is a lot of songs that they managed to fit onto a 7-inch. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to, but it's like we have talk about resources, as you were saying. Well, we have this amount of money, and we can put this amount of. We're a hardcore band, and those guys, you know, C.A. Ritchie and Jr. and you know Erie and Postmortem or whatever, those guys played at breakneck speed as fast as humanly possible. Yeah. So why wouldn't they put 14 songs?
Yeah, because some of the songs are only there's one or two that are under a minute, and if I remember correctly, I think that record played at 33 RPM.
Is that faster or slower?
That's slower.
Forgive me.
I think it played at 33 so that they could fit all of them in there. I don't think they would have all fit at 45.
Crazy.
As a matter of fact, I kind of got acquainted with Postmortem. His real name is Bob Montina. I kind of connected with him probably about 2004 when they reissued the CD. Yeah. And he was I haven't spoken to him since then, but he was a really cool guy, very down to earth.
They tried to do a DVD, I think, and it never
Say again?
They were trying to, I think he was trying to do a DVD for them, and it just never, the bassist, they were trying to put some sort of retrospective. Yeah, Bob, and it just never came to fruition. I could be wrong about that.
I've never seen any live footage of. I mean, I guess it exists, but I've never seen it, and that's one thing that I would love to see.
I don't know if I think it was meant to be just like a documentary sort of retrospective thing, but I don't know. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't know. So how did you? So you were saying before, you were telling me off air that you knew Erie, or that you got to know Erie, or that Erie was sort of your in.
He was my catalyst to a lot of stuff. Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, you know, once I don't remember how I obtained I think it was in a fanzine or something. There was like the Rosemary's Babies ad, like for the record and stuff. And I was like, okay, that's another band from Lodi. So, all right. And it was like the Devil Baby. It was, you know, whatever their
right. Yeah. With the little horns.
Yeah. With the pitchfork and stuff. And I'm like, all right, this looks kind of cool. So, all right, they're from Lodi. So I sent away for the record.
Right.
And I guess I was probably, I think I was maybe 15 or 16, and it was 83 or 84. It was 83 into 84. Anyway, back when the days when people wrote letters to each other,
right?
You know, and there was an art form to communication. You know, I was in a
analog email.
I was in a band, and you know, I introduced myself, and you know, he would write letters to me and say, oh, you know, talking about Rosemary's Babies and what they were doing, and they weren't really doing anything at the time. It was kind of like they were kind of phasing out at that point. Like the band had kind of not really done anything, but I think he was excited the fact that somebody took an interest in it, you know, and so we got to corresponding. And then, you know, I had the record, I had a couple, he sent me like a bunch of t-shirts for free, stickers.
It's awesome.
You know, little 8x10, you know, Xerox copies of the band photo and stuff. I don't know what happened to all that stuff, sadly, but anyway, when I got my license, and I guess I was a ballsy kid, I'm like, oh, okay, I got Erie's, this is his home address. You know, I'm just going to show up at his house, you know.
Yeah.
So it's not like he didn't know who I was. We had been communicating, and it wasn't out of the ordinary for people to just knock on your door at one point.
It was a different era.
And
there was different ways of communicating. Like, it used to be normal, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But it used to be normal that if you wanted to talk to a girl or talk to anybody, but didn't have said person's phone number,
you knock on their door.
Or you could go to someone else and be like, hey, do you have so-and-so's phone number? They would just give it to you, and you'd call up cold and be like, hey, is so-and-so there? Hey, I'm so-and-so. And that's the way.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
We're going to get to that later.
I mean, but that's just the way things were. That's how.
It wasn't out of the ordinary. It wasn't like, wow,
right.
Nobody had Ring doorbells and all that kind of stuff where they could see a mile away.
Right.
So anyway, so I knocked on his door, and his dad answered the door.
This is Erie. This is Erie's dad.
Erie. Yeah, Erie's dad. And I was like, is Erie home? And, he was like, oh, yeah, he's upstairs. Come on in. Who, what's your name? I'm like, oh, I'm John. Eric, John's here. One of those types of things.
Eric.
And so, yeah, I mean, that was, and they were very cordial. They were, just a really cool, nice little house. And, until you went upstairs into Erie had 2 rooms.
Oh.
He had a bedroom, and he had his hangout room. And I think maybe like his older sister, or I think I know he had a sibling, but I'm not sure if it was a brother or sister, but somebody had gotten married and moved out. So that other bedroom became his man cave.
Wow.
Essentially. That's where like the Danzig hotline originated, from his phone. Yeah. His answering machine. And it was, both his rooms were just, posters, pictures, artwork, records, a shit ton of Elvis everywhere.
Amazing.
And he was really cool. And we would talk music, and, I would tell him what I was doing. And that was shortly after the first Rock Hotel show in March of 84.
March of 84. They still hadn't finished recording Initium yet. I
didn't even know what Samhain sounded like at that point.
Wow.
So, he's like, well, I'm doing this other band now. And he's like, I'm doing a band with Glenn Danzig from the Misfits. Like, Rosemary's Babies is essentially dead at this point. He was still trying to keep it alive, but, he's like, his energy was focused on Samhain. So that was my introduction to Samhain. Was that night the first night that I knocked on Erie's door.
But you already knew who the Misfits were. You already knew that they had broken up, but you didn't know.
I think I knew they had broken up, but I didn't know what Danzig was up to at that point.
Interesting.
I didn't know, because I didn't read a lot of fanzines, and it may have been like summer vacation, and like I didn't see the other kids that I knew from school to ask. And again, at that point, the only reference that I had at that point was Earth AD, so I didn't really know about the other. Eventually I would find out and backtrack. But at that point, I knew who Morning Noise was, Rosemary's Babies, the Misfits, and that was my introduction to Samhain. And I think if I remember correctly, right, not too long after that, Pete and Steve were on WFMU radio show, and the record was supposed to come out in a couple of weeks. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is what Erie was telling me about. Glenn
what's interesting?
Glenn wasn't there, Erie wasn't there.
What's really interesting is that both Glenn, Erie and Steve, were drummers within their bands, but yet like at the very forefront of like making stuff happen within their bands, kind of interesting. Like how, because usually you think of like a drummer as sort of like, if you look at the Misfits, it's like a drummer's in the background, but no, like Steve both of them played drums, but they were
steered their bands.
They were steering their bands. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Yeah. They're steering their bands from the drummer seat, and it's just something that you don't generally see. And it's interesting how they then both went on to be in Samhain with Glenn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, when Erie had originally told me, I mean, the Lyle Preslar thing was over at that point, and he says, well, it's Steve from Morning Noise and Damien Pete Marshall from Morning Noise. And Erie, I'm like, wow, this is like a Lodi punk supergroup. Like I was kind of excited about it,
but not even from a Glenn Danzig Misfits POV, like from the other way around. That's what's so interesting about it.
But I mean, Pete lived in Rutherford, but the rest of the guys were all from Lodi, and I was like, this is kind of where it's happening. So
Yeah.
That, and this, kind of friendship with Erie would continue for years at this point. Like once I started getting into Samhain, I got the record. I don't remember if it was from Erie, but Erie did give me a lyric sheet. My copy did not come with a
Nice.
lyric sheet. Erie did give me a lyric sheet. And then on Holy Passion, and he would,
Let me interject. Let me
we'd continue
interject
to
real
write
quick.
to each other. Go ahead.
I just want to interject real quick. I'm very curious because you're such a detail-oriented and descriptive guy in the way that you talk and tell stories and things, and just really, really intimate with this stuff. Much like John of Doom, the other John of Doom.
Evil Heim.
Evil Heim. He's John of Doom. I know you're John of Doom too, but he's both John of Doom. Whatever. Let me ask you this.
Yes.
What in your best words, how do you describe the music of Samhain? What is Samhain like musically? How do you come about that? Someone who's never heard the music before, let alone maybe someone who's never even heard punk. Maybe that's not possible actually.
If I was to have to describe to someone what Samhain sounded like?
Yeah. But forget about that thing I said about like never have heard punk period, because that would just be ridiculous. But someone who's never heard. Yeah, like how do you describe their music?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I would well, I definitely wouldn't call it a punk band. I'd definitely say it was punk influenced in the approach. It's weird because coming from being a musician, I would look at it in a different way that maybe some people wouldn't. I'd say some of it was, I know Haim has said this and I have to agree with him, somewhat dark, somewhat tribal, somewhat, like you take a song like Archangel, which was supposed to have been sung by Dave Vanian. I mean, you could totally see that.
It sounds like when you think about it from that perspective, you hear a Damned song.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like it's a Damned song.
But then you take a song like Black Dream, which was one of their earliest songs.
Right.
And the chord progressions, that could have been a Misfits song too.
I was going to say that could be Earth A. I have a whole, I clipped one of my longer videos. I did like this whole tangent about sort of the confusion from Earth AD to Initium and how there is some overlap and how, it would be kind of fascinating to see Earth AD songs from a Samhain approach.
And I am taking you up on that challenge.
Oh, okay. You already know what I'm talking about.
There is going to be a song from Initium.
Wow. Okay.
That sounds like it could have been on Earth AD.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I think you're going to like it. And I already talked to Haim about it, and we're definitely going to make it happen. So
cool.
So your challenge was
accepted. All right. Yes. So you already know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I
go watch that video for anybody who's not familiar. But you look at a song like the songs that really kind of like you listen to Black Dream, you listen to All Murder, and you go, yeah, of course this is the guy who did the Misfits, duh. But then you listen to Macabre, and the thing about like Macabre being
or the
played,
Shift.
or the Shift, or the How, but really Macabre and Shift, those two songs, and you think about those two songs, and even Unholy Passion, the song being played for a hardcore meathead audience.
Yeah,
in 1985.
I'm sure you've seen the Rock Hotel video.
Of course. Oh yeah.
So I mean, excuse me, they weren't
different lyrics.
Yeah. He hadn't really had it down yet, and in my opinion, I think they did that show probably way too early. They weren't ready yet.
Oh yeah.
But this is just being nitpicky and stuff. But I would definitely say that he was starting to progress more into, like I had said before, I know at the time I've heard from people that he was listening to a lot of goth type stuff. So an Alien Sex Fiend type of sound, Bauhaus,
Nick Cave.
So he was probably trying to go in that direction. So I would definitely say it was more of a dark, gothy, but still powerful. Not as, for lack of a better term, not as wimpy sounding as what I felt a lot of that stuff was. I think it had a harder edge to it.
Specimen, yeah.
But then when I saw Samhain live for the first time and saw these songs played live,
yeah,
and it sounded like a totally different. It sounded a lot more powerful.
You had to be there.
Did.
You had to be there.
Yeah, I saw them 3 times.
That's amazing. Oh, and by the way, go and listen when we get done here. Go listen to the band Wire. Go listen to, oh my God, what's the name of the song by Wire? It's going to bother me. That is In My Grip, or that that's where In My Grip came from. There was a lot of inspiration taken from that.
Everything comes from somewhere.
Everything comes from somewhere. Yeah, but no, that is a perspective. I seriously have never heard that in all of the episodes of the show and all the times that we've talked about. No, just about I mean, this is why I live for, talking to people who were around this stuff, because you described something that's totally new to me. That's blowing my mind. You're talking about how the songs were when they were recorded, but then hearing them live, there's a power behind them that you can't really sort of replicate unless you're in the live space, hearing it through a stack. And then all of a sudden, it makes sense that it would be at a hardcore show or whatever, like with all these other hardcore bands.
But at the beginning, I could see he was definitely taking a risk with a lot of his new material, because it was not going to appeal to the people who were expecting Earth AD Part 2.
Right.
But as a musician, I understand people's progressions and they take a different turn in their songwriting.
Right.
So I definitely understand that part of it, but some people may not. Some people may be like, oh, this sucks. It doesn't sound like what I was expecting it to be. But then as the band went, I never saw them with Steve. I only saw them with London.
Ah, interesting.
So I've seen live videos with Steve. I missed the Danceteria show in '85, and Steve played that show. And then I got to see them at City Gardens in, I believe it was October of '85, right after London had joined the band. And then I saw them at the Ritz the following year twice.
Did you saw that final show?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I actually thought the one before that, I think it was in April.
Yeah.
I think that one was better.
Interesting.
I think that one was better. And again, were they sloppy live? Somewhat. Not as sloppy as the Misfits, but it wasn't spot on perfect. But then again, it doesn't need to be. It's the immediacy, the presence, the energy, the aggression.
Yeah, but it was way better put together than what the Misfits were live. I mean, it was
absolutely. I haven't really heard what I would. There's Misfits bootlegs that I can't even listen to them because they're
nigh unlistenable. Like you literally, what you listen to them for? You don't listen to them for musical enjoyment per se. You listen to them because it's like a way of time traveling, or it's a way of sort of like, hearing the stage banter. There's like a lot of reasons to listen to them, but it's not like I don't listen to them for enjoyment. That's why Evil Live is Evil Live, because that's the best.
That was the best one.
That was the best one.
Fact, Frankie had even said to me, and Frankie from VOD and from my first band, like I said, he was friends with another guy named Bob, who eventually joined Voice of Doom as a bass player towards the end. Bob had given me his copy of Horror Business, which I think he got at the door at the Irving Plaza show. I think
in '79
when they were giving that out. And I remember asking him, like, what did the Misfits sound like live? And he would just be like, they sounded like shit. And I'm like, really? And he was like, yeah, they were horrible. They were awful. The guitars were all out of tune, and it was just a mess. But as a show, it was great. But but just playing wise, it was just kind of all over the place. One of the better videos I've seen, I think, was like around Halloween, the Bethlehem, Pennsylvania show.
That's a good show.
That's a pretty good one.
That's a pretty good one. Yes, yeah. I know exactly. I know what you're talking about. They're kind of on the floor, right?
Yeah. And Doyle's having problems with his amp at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then eventually it comes on. That's a pretty good one.
And if you want, and what's real chaos? I mean, really, really real chaos is Channel Club, '83, Boston.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
which is just you literally see like 12 guys pile on Glenn and he's still singing the song.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's just I mean, it is crazy.
You know what's interesting about that Channel Club is that the one where the guy's kind of interviewing them from the stage and Glenn's he's kind of seems like real shy.
No,
Right?
that's Why Be Something You're Not. That's in
Okay.
Dearborn, Michigan.
Okay.
In January of '83.
He's very like he's very like not I guess maybe not used to talking, being interviewed.
But he had that. But that's not. I'll tell you why that's not true.
You don't see it that way.
I don't. I think he's being no. He's very shy. But there's okay. So I don't know. You should check out this episode. Friend of the show and someone I've known for years, Greg Fasolino. He actually came on the show as well.
I've heard of Greg.
Greg is the man. Greg is the greatest archivist that ever lived. Like the dude is a living archivist. Like but one day he just out of nowhere, very casually goes, "Oh yeah, here's this thing that he taped WFMU off of the radio in 1982. It was 43 minutes of the Misfits on the air. No one's ever heard it. It just like you can't. It's just something that just surfaced. I think it was last year, or it was either earlier this year or it was last year. I don't remember. I think it was earlier this year. And also, he also has a Danzig interview because he's also interviewed Glenn on 2 separate occasions. Yeah. But what's amazing about these recordings is that he just had him sitting on a tape. And in the '82 Misfits interview, which by the way, there's a revelation of Glenn saying that the Misfits are going to score the soundtrack for Blood Feast 2. And what's interesting about that is as we all know, Blood Feast 2 doesn't come out until 2002. It's directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis. Could he have been talking about Blood Diner that was directed by Jackie Kong and written by Dookie Flyswatter of Haunted Garage, which came out in 1987?
Or was it just a bunch of bullshit?
It just a bunch of bullshit? But it's just like, but what's interesting is like, but that's what's so cool. And the thing is, like, he gets into a whole thing with someone on the air. He was not shy. And there's an interview from '79 on the radio. It's a 1-minute snippet right before they go to England. And Glenn, you can hear Bobby in there too. It's really crazy. And Glenn and Bobby, they're not shy. So I don't know. Maybe you're right, but I didn't, or maybe it's because he's just on the radio and it's a little bit different. It's not like, he has a camera and he knows he's being recorded. Who knows, man?
That was just kind of like my take on it. Like at the time, he wasn't used to that format or wasn't expecting it. Or,
right.
I don't know. That's kind of just the way it came across to me. And, he looked a lot younger, a lot thinner, no tattoos at that point. He kind of looked. Actually, the funny part about it is he kind of resembled like a young Haim, like the way he kind of came across.
Really?
Like that was kind of the way I saw that.
And what's interesting too is you're a guy. You've seen Samhain, but you still, the Misfits were before your time a little bit, and so the first time that you see the Misfits is probably, I'm making an assumption here, but is on some crappy duped VHS tape that some VHS holdover from something. Am I right?
I never saw any live Misfits tapes VHS.
Get out of here!
Time. No, not at that time. I did not.
When was the first time that you saw the band live and being like, "Holy shit, that's the band. That's the Misfits"?
That's a good question. When did I ever see a live recording video of them?
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you.
Wow.
I couldn't even tell you. No. I really don't know. I don't know.
I remember seeing one in 2002, which this was pre-YouTube, and to think I had no idea that there was any at that time. And I hadn't dredged through Misfits Central yet, probably, but at that time I didn't know that there was any live VHS or any footage of the original band. I thought the only thing was the music videos of the Misfits in the 90s, and that's it.
Well, so back then, if you think about it, the recording equipment was very primitive.
Of course. Yeah.
And somebody, whoever, whether they knew about it or it was just somebody showing up with a video camera, probably filmed it and then maybe forgot about it or made copies for his friends, and it didn't start to circulate for many, many years.
Right.
I don't remember anybody in my circle physically having a VHS tape with the Misfits live on it.
But even then, the thing is, I see what you're saying. But like, and here's what the other thing you're talking about, like the fact that like back then to even have somebody recording a show or something being kind of like hard to come by. But like, even then, the Misfits were recorded a lot for a band that wasn't really recorded, right? Like they were recorded a whole bunch.
Yeah, they were. And whether it was band sanctioned or it was just a fan or somebody that worked at the club,
right?
I don't know. I don't know. That's another rabbit hole to kind of go down. Like, who recorded them here? Who had the original tapes? Did they know about it at the time? Did somebody, say, hey, listen, I'm going to be filming you guys tonight. Have a good show.
I think that definitely is probably varied from show to show. I do know that the earliest recordings of the Misfits, for sure, were recordings made by Manny, the drummer, the first drummer, Manny Martinez. He recorded practices. He recorded live shows. The third live show was recorded, for sure. Maybe even the first two, from my understanding. I think even the first two CBGB shows. Yeah, the first two CBG shows are recorded. And then, we talked recently, I think it was the last show or the show before that, about the Night of Living Dead music video. It's like it's shot on pneumatic tape. It's like for a format or for technology that was hard to come by, the Misfits always seem to walk right into it pretty easily. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny when you think about it.
But it's funny, when you look at a lot of their early videos as compared to a lot of Dead Kennedy stuff. Dead Kennedy's stuff was recorded. A lot of live shit was recorded, but the quality was better. So was it the luck of the draw? Even Flag, some of the Flag stuff was still kind of still shitty, but somewhat better in some ways.
I think what you're referring to is not so much a question of quality as in the quality of the video that you're watching, because this stuff gets dubbed and duped, and then the quality just degrades and degrades. There was a first generation of the Bookie Show. It was like a very close to first generation of the Bookie Show from '81 in Detroit, and you can actually see Arthur Googie like in the band. It's like kind of crazy, and they actually
I've seen I think I've seen that.
Yeah, it's super clear, and you're like, whoa, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, you had guys at like Max's Kansas City with like Super 8 cameras that could record sound shooting stuff too. You know, I mean, like it's just, they definitely were recorded, but I always find it interesting, like to think that, before the age of YouTube, like if you wanted to see them, you had to see them on a VHS, and even still, my imagination ran wild. And then when the first time I ever saw the Misfits was on Why Be Something You Not. I think it was probably the year 2002. And I'm remembering the quality was terrible, but being like, oh my God, that's the actual band. I've seen photographs, but I've never seen them actually playing.
Yeah.
They're actually playing. And it just like blew my mind. The mythology around this band. It's crazy.
That's a very interesting point, because I saw live action shots. We all have.
Right.
And it was very interesting to me to be so captivated with a lot, like the live action shot, whether it was from Erie or whomever, the live action shot had like a sound, it had magic,
right?
And in retrospect, a lot of the live action pictures were better to me than actually seeing live video of them, because I had an expectation of what it sounded like from the picture.
Interesting.
The way it was taken, and Erie took so many. Everybody knows Erie took 1,000 pictures. But seeing the live action shots to me kind of spoke more than actually seeing. It's cool to see a video. It's cool to see the videos.
Yeah,
I watch as many as, when I see them, I watch them. I may not watch the whole thing. I may watch, bits and pieces of it. And for nostalgic's sake, that's pretty cool. But seeing the live pictures and hearing it in my mind, what my interpretation of what that picture sounded like to me held more water.
Real quick, I just want to say, Chris, I would love to talk to the dude from Red Shark who shot the Brain Eaters music video and did the channel show back to back. They were done back to back. They did the channel show, and then they did the commercial. No, I don't know which came first, actually. In any case, we could talk about that off the air. But Chris, I very much would like to talk to that dude. So tell me about the formation. So you're seeing Samhain. You're friends with Eerie. How does Voice of Doom form? How do you get that? How does that all get going?
Voice of Doom started in the summer of '86. I kind of wanted, and again, the Dave Grohl school. Every drummer wants to play guitar, write songs, that kind of shit. So I was a young kid, and I was like, okay, this is kind of what I want to do. I was 18, 19. And the band we were in at the time was kind of on the verge of falling apart. So I had mentioned to Frankie, I said, I want to do something. Are you interested in doing it with me? And he was on board. So
right.
I had appendix surgery in May of 1986. So I was home for 2 months. And during that 2-month period, I started writing songs. And I was influenced, I'm not going to lie, I was influenced by the Misfits and Samhain, but only kind of like in theory. Like I kind of wanted it to be like Black Sabbath meets Black Flag. That was my take. And
interesting.
I hate to say, I hate when people say like, well, what does this band sound like? Well, it sounds like so-and-so meets so-and-so.
Oh, I love that. That's such a good qualifier.
I hate that, because it may not sound like that, but in my mind, this is kind of the area where I'm coming from. Slower songs, faster songs, heavy. And we kind of got it, we got it going. We didn't have a bass player at first. We got a drummer. I was playing bass and singing, and, Frankie's playing guitar. We had a drummer. And then, we started having a revolving door of bass players and drummers. And the band was only together for about 2 years. Eventually I switched to guitar and sang. But then, and to get back to what we were talking about before, cold calling.
Yeah.
Cold calling. I saw when Frankie and I saw Samhain at the Ritz in '86. I said, we're like, well, we need a drummer like London. That's the kind of drummer we need, And Frankie was just like, well, why don't we just get London? Do you think he'd want to play with us? And I'm like, why would he? Like, he's playing in Samhain. He's like, yeah, but you never know. Like,
right.
You know, or maybe he knows somebody or something. I'm like, all right, that's not a bad idea. So, and I remember they were down, after that they were kind of, no, I'm sorry. Let me backtrack for a second. It was after the second show. And then I had found out from Eerie that they were, reconstructing for the next thing. That was after the Rubin thing. They weren't doing anything at the time.
Right. So question.
Yes.
This is very interesting. This is like my favorite.
I don't want to lose my train of thought.
Oh, no. Okay. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Ask.
No. It's in relation to what we're talking about. So it'll stay. I remember your place.
I don't want you to forget it either.
No, I'm not going to forget it. Swear. I'm going to remember it.
So I'm sorry. My timeline was screwed up. But during that time period,
yeah,
I said, you know what? What the fuck? 411, yes. The last name is May in Rutherford, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Because I found out from Erie that's where he was, and there it was, Christopher London May. Christopher May. I knew that was his full name. Dial his number, hello, is this London? Blah, blah, blah. Introduced myself, told him who I was, told him I was a friend of Erie's. I saw you guys at the Ritz. I saw you at City Gardens, blah, blah, blah. we got to talking, and we were the same age. He was about I think London is he's about 2 months older than me.
Wow.
And he was living there with his girlfriend, and he wasn't doing anything at the time. There was no money coming in,
right.
because they were down pending the Rick Rubin thing. So that's where he was supposed to go next. But he's like, well, I said, I have a show coming up. I have a couple shows coming up. I have some recording coming up. Would you like to come down and check it out? Maybe you'd want to, sit in with us. And he was like, yeah, I'll check it out. I'll see what's up. And that's how that happened, and he was only with us for a short period of time. He wasn't going to be with us for very long because of, going on to the what would eventually become Danzig.
Right.
But it was kind of like a fill-in for him to make a little extra cash and play. And, we became close friends. I mean, we're not extremely close to this day. We still are in contact, but at the time, we were like BFFs for that time. And, and then of course we all know what happened. Chuck Biscuits came in and London moved back to Baltimore.
Right.
And that was it. That was it.
It.
After London, we got a couple of different people here and there, but it didn't have the same impact as having him. And that was the kind of drummer that I wanted, because I'm a drummer. So,
right.
Now that I'm writing songs and it's gotta be London May or just as good, even though the other guys were still okay, but I was just like, that's it. It's like, this is done.
Now,
and that was it.
That's also like such an interesting time period, because like it's almost 2 years before they reemerge as Danzig, and so much changes. Yeah. The sound changes, the songs change. Just like everything kind of changes, especially there's like this period where they kind of like don't really have a guitar player, and there's still, that's
another interesting one. I'm sure you've heard that how John Christ got the gig.
Because he was friends with London.
Well, London's parents were friends or knew his parents. And John actually came, when John came up from Maryland, he lived with London.
Right.
And
this I knew.
He came to A Voice to Doom rehearsal with London. It was me, London, John Christ, and our bass player at the time in my car on our way to VOD rehearsal.
Wow.
And John was a total Tony Iommi, with the mustache,
right,
and curly hair and everything.
Yeah.
And he was, he wasn't from Baltimore. He was kind of like from the outskirts. So he was kind of rural in a way, totally cool guy, but just, you could tell he just wasn't from around here.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, that was the time where it was like, when John had gotten the gig, and then they started rehearsing. But even prior to that, I remember with Erie, going back to Erie, going over Erie's house, and Erie is in the bathroom mirror putting makeup on, and I'm like, "You going out?" And he's like, "Yeah, we have guitarist auditions tonight in New York," and he was in full Erie Von.
Wow.
Not just hanging out in his house, with a basketball jersey. He was going. He was putting it on, And then then that was a short period of time with John in London, and then I don't remember. Oh, John eventually moved in with Chuck and me and Haim's friend Mike.
Right.
You've heard that story.
Well, you guys got to hear the cool version of You and Me.
I didn't hear it. I wasn't there for that.
Interesting.
Yeah, no. Haim heard that. I never heard it, so I can't
corroborate
it with him.
That's crazy.
I'm sorry, I cut you off. You were getting ready to say something.
No, I basically said it was just that this is a very interesting time, and that in my scholarly studies of all this nerdy shit, that I find this to be a very interesting sort of period, because when they left, we did a whole episode on this recently, but when they finished that show and they signed with Rubin, they were still kind of Samhain. They were not, they had songs in the can that were going to be for a fourth album. Yeah. And Danzig was toying with that's right. I forgot to include that. Danzig was really toying with the idea of releasing. He's like, well, we're going to be doing the major label thing, but it's taking forever. So why don't we're thinking about trying to release one more Samhain record. He kind of knew. It's from this interview. It sounded like he kind of knew that it was, that the writing was on the wall for anything that was Samhain.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, November Coming Fire really is, the period, the punctuation on this exploration of what that was. Like you really, in fact, I said it. I forgot what I said. The beginning of it was, but the end, in my opinion, is a song like, To Walk the Night or November's Fire. Like that's the period on Samhain, really. Like it's just like, where do you kind of go from there? But sort of continue to evolve. And if anything, what would Samhain? Here's one for you. What would a Rubin produced Samhain sound like? Had they not changed the name to Danzig and sort of stripped everything down and whatnot? You just listen to Possession on Danzig 1, right?
My opinion, I mean, I got to learn a lot about Rick. I knew who Rick Rubin was.
Yeah.
And I knew he was big in the rap scene, but I got to learn a lot about Rubin from Erie in those original rehearsals.
Interesting.
I was still friends with Erie. I was still, right up until the short period before they moved to California, we were still friendly. And he would tell me, like, Rick Rubin's favorite instrument is the hi-hat. So he's real big on the hi-hat.
Wow.
He likes his leads off to one side. That's kind of the way he prefers them. He likes everything very trebly, believe it or not. He likes a lot of treble. He kind of likes everything flat. I'm sure you've heard it a million times. He likes things to sound like, he loves AC/DC, and he was producing the Cult and stuff like that. And he kind of made the Cult sound AC/DC-ish. And that's kind of the way, he wanted a guitar. He was very happy with John, even though, I don't know if you've heard, like, John was so nervous for his audition that I think he actually like threw up or something.
I did not hear that.
Yeah,
he
went like totally off. Like, he was like running around and he was nervous and he was like, I think he like bit Rick Rubin, or it could just be bullshit, but who the hell knows? But that was the way, the way Rick preferred to work. And, all that shit about him laying down on a couch and looking up in the air and listening to it and making suggestions and how he wanted things. The majority of that stuff I had heard firsthand from Erie, because he would come to Zounds. They rehearsed at Zounds, which was literally, a half a mile away from where Chuck and John were living at the time, and Glenn was in the next town. And, Erie would tell me, Rick would say, all right, show me what you got. And he would just stand there with his arms folded and listen to it.
Oh, my God.
And make suggestions. So, in my opinion, a Rick Rubin produced Samhain album, I don't think would have sounded like Samhain. I think.
You just schooled the shit out of me, bro.
Because Rick, and you can see it later on when you listen to a band like, the Four Horsemen.
Okay.
Who was another deaf American. I don't know if you've ever heard of them before.
I have not heard of them.
Chuck Biscuit's brother, Dimwit was in the Four Horsemen, and that was a Rick Rubin produced album, as far as I remember. I know he was on it somewhere, if not maybe executive producer. But it has that sound to it. It has that straight ahead rock and roll. Rick at the time had a very signature sound, and you might not hear it unless you're kind of like listening for it. He would put his lead off to one side and it would come out blaringly loud. That was kind of like his thing. And when Erie told me this, and then I started listening to Rick Rubin produced stuff, I think that, that's what I think. I think a Rick Rubin produced Samhain album probably would have sounded like the first Danzig guy. But I know Rick was
Possession.
I know Rick would lend a hand in arranging as well too, because I'm sure you've heard that.
I can't imagine
grim demos as opposed to the way the songs came out on the first Danzig album.
Of course, he had input. I couldn't imagine that Rick Rubin didn't shape. I mean, that's literally what it is. It's like if there's like a machine, if Rick Rubin is a machine and there's a conveyor belt, it's like you watch Samhain go through the machine and they come out as Danzig.
That's an excellent point.
Right? Like you don't know what's going on inside, but that's what you just did. Through your game of telephone, through the secondhand information via Eerie, because you soaked it up. And I'm sure Eerie, who knows if Eerie remembers even saying all that stuff, but it's like, but that's what's amazing. It's intact because you remembered.
Yeah.
And now we know. And that's like, that was like, you're blowing my mind with all these little revelations of just like how he came in and he's like, look, let's strip away the old band. And Glenn's like, no. Eerie stays with us. And, just like all these different things that we kind of, know from interview stuff, but then like the actual mechanics of how the sound changes.
Yeah.
You're blowing my mind right now.
Well, I know that way. I mean, I've known Pete Marshall a long time, Damien.
Great guy. Yep.
Great guy.
I interviewed him on this channel. Great guy.
And as a matter of fact, we just recently did some work together. We was recording some new stuff with Electric Frankenstein, and Pete actually came in to rehearse with us on the bass. And
he did. Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh my God. Electric Frankenstein with Pete on bass. Fuck yeah, dude. That's great.
So I know Rick Rubin was looking like, I think John Christ was the perfect mold for what Rick Rubin was
right.
looking
he wanted
to do.
That. Yeah, he wanted that.
He wanted a guy who, and again, I've maybe had a handful of conversations with John in my life, but the John Christ coming up from rural Maryland with the perm and the mustache, to what he became was he was such a great guitar player, and he was willing to do anything to make it because he was hungry, and
right.
And his image, the way his they had the sandwich, the bookends with John and Eerie and the long hair and the mustache, the mutton chops, the whole 9 yards. He was the perfect,
very Sabbathish of them.
Yeah,
to sort of do that,
like a Geezer
too.
Tony thing. Yeah. And he was perfect, and he could play the shit out of the guitar, and Rick could kind of steer him in the direction of the way he wanted him to, as opposed to a guitar player coming in with his own agenda.
Now, what's interesting, two things. All right, now I remember what I wanted to interject the first time too. So you're talking about Pete, and I asked Pete, when I was talking to Pete, I had Pete on the show, and he's like, yeah. Like when I left Samhain, when I was out, he said it took him 2 years to figure out how to like replay the guitar, normally or whatever.
Because he just quit playing? I didn't know that.
No, not that he quit playing, just that playing the guitar.
Oh, because he had dumbed it down basically for Samhain.
No, not dumbed it down, but that just like, because I said, Pete, what makes Samhain different from other music? And this is what he said to me. And again, not a musician, everybody. We all know this. Just saying, you're the musician, actually. Maybe you could speak to it or not speak to it. He said that it's not rooted in the blues. That's what he said to me.
That's a good point. That's
right?
A good point.
So there's a lot of angular stuff. Everything's like unconventionally.
Yeah.
The hooks, like, what's funny? Samhain has hooks in it, but yet it's like angular and weird. It's kind of like the Pixies, actually. The Pixies are like that too.
I had heard an interview with Pete where he said that when I used the phrase dumbed it down, was that he was more, that really wasn't in his natural wheelhouse to play that way. He kind of like adapted to it. But, Pete is a very old school guy when it comes to, equipment and stuff that he likes and listens to. And, of course we know
he's a gearhead.
He had a career with Eerie, with Iggy Pop.
Yeah.
So I remember him saying that he actually had to play, it was less, what's the word I'm looking for? It was less challenging for him to play that kind of stuff
What, Samhain?
The Samhain kind of stuff.
Huh.
Maybe not less challenging, but less. It was a challenge for him to adapt to Glenn's style, but it wasn't what he was used to and what he felt comfortable with. Maybe that's
all I know is that he was just basically like, he said it wasn't rooted in the blues, and he said that,
which is absolutely correct.
Yeah, just that it's like such a weird, like, what a weird thing to say, because when you think about rock is rooted in the blues. That's what it's everything, everything's rooted from the blues. So it's like not, it like doesn't come from that kind of way. And yet at the same time, there are certain Samhain songs that I think would definitely, like, you could imagine. I think one time I was imagining Duran Duran doing like synth covers of certain Samhain songs, and that it would work. I forgot what episode that was, but we came up with some pretty good ones where it would kind of like, kind of work out, in a way that makes sense, if you could imagine. Because, I mean, Glenn is using, like, for instance, when Glenn is playing drums on November Coming Fire, that half of the drums that he's playing are not even actually drums. They're like it's like a drum machine.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing drum machine on it,
Mm-hmm.
And you could definitely hear that on the Final Descent Samhain Grim demos for sure.
It's funny.
It's just ridiculous.
If I sit down with a guitar and I'm like, just playing, because every once in a while I'll just do it. I'm sure millions of people do it. Sit down and play along with one of their records. Glenn, he would write in what I would call it. He would write in a box.
Yeah.
This song is in D, and it's gonna be in this box, and it's gonna all circle around D, and then this one is in, C, and it's gonna circle around C. Like especially on Walk Among Us. Very much kind of structured in that way. But then a song like Samhain, as opposed to The Howl, or even his redo of Horror Business, they're all kind of, they're not in that box, and
right.
Sometimes the way the song progresses, or where he goes when he's writing the song on guitar, is not what you would expect, which makes it interesting to listen to. It definitely makes it sound different, but I could see where Pete would say it's not rooted in the blues, because it doesn't have natural progression chord changes. It goes somewhere else where you might not expect it. And
right.
But that's what Glenn was.
And
was
that's,
going
it's like, I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do, the anti thing of whatever it is. And then Rubin comes in, and Rubin's like, no.
Yeah, you're taking it, but we're taking it back to the basics here now.
And you know what? Perhaps in fact, what did Pete in, here's a weird observation to make. Perhaps it's even almost Glenn's fault what did Pete in, because Rubin's watching them on the stage at the show that you're at, and he's going, this guitar and this guitar playing, this isn't going to work for what I'm thinking of, like almost that, like, let's start over with someone, like John Christ, because of everything that you just said, technical jargon, whatever. But that's Glenn's design, not Pete's design. But Pete still becomes the casualty.
True. That's true. Pete may have fallen into that well.
Yeah.
For all we know, in hindsight, I mean, we don't know, because he never got that chance.
Right.
But Pete was technically better than he was, because again, like I said, I'd heard interviews with him where he said he actually had to take a step back and, like I said, dumb it down to play that type of stuff. He was capable of doing better, but he didn't have a chance to, because that's not the way it was. Glenn's, idea. This is how I want it to be. Every drum beat, every guitar note, this is how I wanted it. And whether it was carried out that way live, it was somewhat sloppy anyway. You're going crazy and you're not as precise,
right?
And stuff like that. But that's an interesting point. I never thought of that. I'd be curious as to how Pete felt about that.
And then here's the other thing too, that you get, then John Christ comes in, and he's malleable, as you said, which was something that they always kind of liked. And then Rubin falls out of the picture, and it's like they're taking that, but they're still building on top of that Rubin template.
Yeah,
like
he laid the foundation.
Right. Rubin laid a foundation that Glenn continued to build out until he gets to Danzig 5, which is like fuck everything.
Yeah, yeah.
He's like fuck everything.
Which is totally
on brand for Danzig.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, he wanted to do something the same way he wanted to do something different with Samhain as opposed to the Misfits. Now in Danzig 5, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit.
Right.
And you know, I give him, whether I like those records or people like those records or not, you know, as a songwriter, as a, you know, musician, I can totally respect wanting to color outside the lines ground for a little bit. Absolutely.
Sure. I'm okay. I agree. I fully agree with that. And you know, I've listened to those records and they're interesting. They're not particularly my cup of tea.
What's your favorite Danzig album?
Oh my God. I'm gonna have to go with one, like straight up, even though, you know, here's the thing about two. Two kind of falls off for me towards the end. Like, you know, I'm not a big fan of, even though I know this is a popular staple, I'm not a big fan of Devil's Plaything. I'm not a big fan of Not a Girl. I'm not a big fan of Girl. Love Blood and Tears, you know, but the first side of Danzig 2 is like immaculate and unstoppable. But as a full, whole, cohesive album, Danzig 1 straight through, nothing touches it. It's just phenomenal. I love Danzig 3 too. I can listen. Those are three albums I can put on all the way through, but there's only one where I'm like, holy crap, every song's a hit. Now I remember the other thing I wanted to say to you, which was this. To just finish off the Pete and John Christ thing. Then Danzig plays their first show, and I'm sure you've heard that tape, the City Gardens. Oh, you were there. So there you go. So if you should re-listen to a tape of the show if you want to revisit it or whatever. But what's interesting, this is my opinion as a listener to a document. 30.
I've heard your take on that. I saw you talked about it with Haim.
Yeah,
about how he was kind of singing the Danzig songs in a Samhain style.
But not just that. Yes, 100%. That it's the same principle as Samhain in March of '84. They're not quite. The album isn't
finished yet.
The songs aren't finished yet, and he's still singing with that. They're right in the middle of that Rubin makeover. He's still singing gutturally.
Yeah.
And what the point that I wanted to key on is not what Danzig's doing, but that John Christ. And again, God bless John Christ. I didn't even think of that. God bless John Christ. God bless John Christ, man. Like, I love John Christ as a guitar player, but he is not doing those Samhain songs as well as Damien.
No, that's
my point.
It's, you know what? It's funny that you bring that up because, I was there. So
right.
I remember because the album wasn't written yet, so they didn't have a lot of material.
They did a lot of Samhain songs.
They did a lot of Samhain songs, and as much of a great band as Chuck and John were, I prefer those songs played by the Samhain. I agree with you. I always thought that was odd.
It's almost like because people say that
cover band.
Well, I was going to say that, because Chuck and John are technically the last lineup of Samhain, that Danzig's first show is technically, or in a weird kind of nerdy, semantic, we're sitting here really picking up the tiniest of minutiae ways that it's the last Samhain show.
Yeah.
Because of the
interesting point.
I mean, they open the set with Samhain.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They play Black Dream.
Yeah.
And you hear John Christ can't grasp these songs, but then he plays the new Danzig material, and it's like he's on fire. I mean, he's absolutely on fire. But you give those songs to Pete, and Pete, he knows what to do right away with them.
Yeah.
So
well, that also could be that Pete had played them for so many years. They were very. They hadn't gelled yet as a unit.
Danzig or Samhain?
At that City Garden show.
Yeah.
They didn't really have the chemistry. They didn't have the chemistry yet.
They weren't tight yet.
It was still fairly new. They hadn't been together for that long, and they may have written the Danzig songs together, but Glenn, saying, okay, we're going to play 6 Samhain songs. So learn them, and they hadn't
Great
played.
point.
They hadn't
You
played them
nailed
for
it.
very long.
John, you nailed it. I think you just nailed it on the head. And then fast forward to Irvine Meadows in 92, and they're doing Left Hand Black, that video that pops up, and they are just the tightest band. Like they're telepathically reading each other's minds on that stage, and they're just the most well-oiled machine, this perfect unit that just knows every nook and cranny of what they're supposed to be doing.
The chemistry was there, the repetitiveness, and they grew into a band together. Almost like when you see the first Samhain show at Rock Hotel, and then you see the first Danzig show, even though the first Danzig show was better.
Yeah.
You know, it was still the origin of it, and they didn't quite have it yet.
Right.
You know, so that's, you know.
Now let me ask you this question.
With a lot of new, you know, as soon as you get something, you're not great right out of the gate. You know, it takes time.
No, of course not. Of course not. Let me ask you this question.
Yes.
What do you consider to be the best Samhain album? I mean, the best Danzig album.
Well, my favorite Danzig album is probably I'm out after 4. You know,
like most people.
I like again, like you say, the first one, you put it on from start to finish, yes, I can do it. Okay, but that's not my favorite. That's not my favorite album. I like 1. I like 2 better, but 90% of it. And 3, I like 80% of it.
Love 3. So,
you know, I go back and forth. I can't pick a favorite. If gun to my head, if I had to pick a favorite, I'm going to say 2.
Gotcha.
Just because I like the variations of the songs.
Right.
You know, like
there's a lot more variety.
To me, that was, you know, like obviously a classic rock influenced approach to it, where every song is not going to be the same. There's an acoustic song. There's a slower, you know, Blood and Tears. There's a slower, you know, which that song is incredibly powerful. You know, to me, there's no reason why that song should not have been a huge hit. More so than Mother. You know, Mother, I have heard it so many times. It's a great song, but if I never hear it again,
same dude.
I won't miss it.
So tired. I'm tired. I've been tired of Mother.
Blood and Tears, in my opinion, should have been bigger than Mother.
That's him doing. And you know what's funny? Along with Sistina's too. I always talked about. You know, I've been talking a lot about this Danzig Sings Elvis record. I'm a big fan. I really, really, really like this record. I think it's, as I've said for the millionth time, Pocket Full of Rainbows, most interesting thing Danzig's recorded in 25 years, personally, in my personal opinion. But what's interesting, I always said that it's an autobiographical record, that you hear him singing "You Were Always on My Mind" and you hear Sistina's and stuff. But when I was listening to Sistina's the other day, I was on my walk, you know, the same walk when when we were talking on the phone, and I'm going, "Oh my God, this isn't Elvis. This is freaking Roy Orbison, dude.
Mm-hmm.
This is absolutely." And I'm not even joking. This is the follow-up to You and Me. That's how you have to listen to Sistina's the next time. And I'm not talking about the big kettle drums. I'm just talking about I'm talking about the guitar and the vocals. And it's like you could put Sistina's as the B-side.
Interesting.
Sistina's is like a Glenn Danzig and the Power and Fury Orchestra song.
Interesting.
Dude.
Interesting.
And it's like, it's not to say that the Elvis influence isn't there either for You Were Always on My Mind, but it doesn't quite fit in the same box when I was re-listening to it and going, holy hell, like you really feel the Roy Orbison in the same way that you hear Jim Morrison on Danzig 1. And really, you know, I was listening to Walk the Night, you know, when I was doing the Samhain listening party thing, and I'm just going, oh my God. I mean, the Morrison thing that he's doing, the To Walk the Night is the beginning of the Danzig the Danzig crew that we get on Danzig 1. It really, that's the first inklings that it's coming. You know, amongst all the barking that he's doing and barking out these Danzig and Samhain songs, that like he's starting to experiment with this idea of doing this Jim Morrison brooding croon that he would perfect on Danzig 1, you know?
Interesting point.
So there's that. So let's fast forward a little bit. Let's fast forward now. Closing the chapter on Danzig for a minute. When do you start first hearing inklings about Christ the Conqueror?
I can't. Haim had the cassette, and I just was unlistened. I didn't. I listened to it a little bit with him, and no, I have no opinion on it except I just didn't like it when I heard it.
Right, but when did you heard like that those guys? I just mean, when did you hear those guys were coming back or something? Right, like what?
I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly. It was just kind of like an in passing thing, like, oh, here's Jerry and Doyle's new band called Christ. I thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
I thought it was a joke. And then I listened to it for like 5 minutes and then that was it. So I can't give you an opinion on Christ Conqueror at all.
Although you kind of can, because a lot of that music would eventually find its way onto those new Misfits records.
I never listen. I listen.
Okay, assuming that you listen to them, but you say you don't. So there you go.
The first one, which we still didn't touch on the. I know we've been on for a long time, but we still didn't touch on the.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get to right now.
I listened to what was the first Misfits album when they came back? Was it Famous Monsters?
They came back with American Psycho and then following Famous Monsters. But before you even start telling me about this.
I listened to that a little bit and I kind of appreciated it, but it fell off my list, fell off my radar.
Fair enough. How about this one for you? The idea that in a weird kind of way, the Misfits 95 subversively is just Christ the Conqueror under the Misfits, using the Misfits name with a new singer.
It could be. I didn't listen to it that in deep to pass an opinion on that. If you say every song on the first Misfits American Psycho was rewritten songs of Christ the Conqueror, if you told me that, I would say okay, because I can't prove it or disprove it.
There's a lot. It's not like note for note, but there's like whole SWAT. Like they took a lot from, they cannibalized that music and reshaped the songs,
which kind of makes sense if you think about it, because there were songs that they liked and they thought they were good, and now they were gonna use them. That would make total sense.
So then tell me, okay, so I was going to start as early as the Christ Conqueror, but so then tell me when you and Haim first hear like, hey, the Misfits are auditioning singers. When does that all come about? How does that happen?
They were letting people go up there as to audition for them. But they already had Chud, and Graves was kind of like waiting in the wings.
Right. Second banana.
Graves actually came down and auditioned for Electric Frankenstein.
Shut up.
Yes. It was during that time period, and it all kind of coincided in the same way because they had chosen Graves, but they weren't sure if he was going to make the cut. They wanted to see if they could get somebody better.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, longtime friend named Billy, his brother was friends with a guy who knew Jerry, and they said, okay, they're letting people come up and audition.
Right.
So, 4 of us went up there.
And for them, it's just an excuse to practice. And
that's pretty much what it was, for people to get interested. Like, hey, I'm trying out for the Misfits, to kind of, get the thing going, what I mean? Excitement, build excitement. So me and Haim, being the Misfits fans that we were, and him with his voice, and me with the drums, knowing all the material, it's like, all right, this is our our teenage moment now.
Right.
Here we are, like, we're going on stage with the Rolling Stones or something, as kids. So it's a great memory. It's a great memory of going up to Vernon.
Yeah.
In their machine shop with all the posters and everything all over the wall. And, Doyle presses a power strip and like 5 amplifiers come on and it sounds like thunder, and Jerry hits his switch and it's like, I'm on the drums. I'm standing in front of me, looking at me with a microphone, and here's Jerry and Doyle.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, this is fight or flight right here.
Right.
Like, and Haim he'll tell you, and he was nervous. I wasn't really so much nervous. I was just like, let's do it. I was excited to do it. So, so Jerry's like, he's like, what songs do you want to do? So they had the set list up on the wall. Halloween, 20 Eyes, Martian, everything. I'm like, fuck it, let's do them all.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, and then, Doyle hits the first chord of Halloween, and then that was it. It was just off from there. And I don't remember how many songs we played, but we did play a whole bunch,
And Chud was recording this on drums?
No, Chud came in later.
Oh, he did?
Chud came in later, and he was watching us play. And then Doyle went back to work.
Yeah.
Because they were working.
Right.
And then I had Doyle's Iceman. I was playing guitar. Chud was playing drums. Haim, I think it stopped singing at that point. Our other friend was singing. Jerry was playing bass. So you've seen the picture of me with Doyle's Iceman, And one of the funniest, moments that I can remember was, we're doing London Dungeon,
Yeah.
And, I'm hitting I don't want to be hitting your London. And I hit the E and I bent the neck on his guitar for emphasis,
yeah.
And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm playing Doyle's Iceman.
But this was interesting.
What if I broke it?
You're playing the Iceman, but by this time he's already making his own guitars. That's what's interesting.
I didn't know that at the time. The Iceman was what he had there to rehearse with.
And do you remember off the top of your memory, what was Jerry have his custom guitar?
He had his his Batwing bass or whatever,
which is just
it was just a black. It was a Batwing bass.
The Devastator, yeah,
whatever it's called.
The Devastator.
My friend that came up with us, he's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're bending the neck on Doyle's guitar. What if you broke it? I'm like,
he just glued it back together.
I'm like, I would have to jump out the window.
Yeah,
that would be my only way out of
here.
But
that Iceman, if it is the right Iceman, that Iceman recorded Earth AD.
I didn't know that.
Yes, that's the Iceman that recorded Earth AD. The Doyle's here, Jerry's here, facing each other, and Robo is facing them.
Yeah,
in a concrete room, and they're just playing live in the room, and with that Iceman.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, that's the Iceman, and it might have even been used on Walk Among Us as well. Don't quote me on that.
Interesting. So that was fun. That was a fun experience.
And got your tape. You got the recording of the tape.
I think our friend Billy has it. That came up with us. I think he has it. Haim may have it. I don't have a copy of it.
Oh my!
If I did, I lost it a long time ago. I get sometimes stuff that I really should keep. I lose a lot of shit.
That is, and did you? Haim remembers. There, you got me calling him Haim instead of John of Doom. Haim remembers that Michael Graves was kind of sulky in the corner or whatever.
Yeah, I think he was. Well, yeah, because he was watching people audition for maybe taking his job.
Yeah. Interesting. I don't blame him. I would be mad too. I'd be like,
and right after that, literally probably like a month or so after that, Frankenstein went through a change where Steve was. I don't know how much you know about Electric Frankenstein.
So I recorded Electric Frankenstein, and I've interviewed Sal. It was over at Sal's house about 10 years ago, interviewing him. I don't know if he would even remember me, but what a sweetheart of a guy, Sal.
But Steve was on the first couple of records with us, and then
Steve is the lead.
Steve's the lead singer, Steve Miller.
Right, yeah. And you know who was in the band when I was sort of like around, not like around, but like Mike Mindless, who just passed away
Oh
last
yeah,
year.
that was
R.I.P.
that was probably about 10 years ago. Yeah,
That
that's
was about,
very,
yes, it was 2011.
yeah,
It was about
very
10
much
years ago.
later, very much later down the line.
Yeah.
But Steve had left Frankenstein for a couple of years to go
I
do
did
his
not know
own
that.
thing. Yeah. And we were looking for another singer, and Graves came down to audition to Zounds in Saddlebrook.
That's so crazy to me.
And we really did, like, I kind of knew who he was, but I was like, well, I just saw you like recently, and he's like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be doing that. He was very like, remorseful about it. He's like, I'm looking to do something else. I think they may have another singer.
That is crazy to
and he
me.
rehearsed with us. Like, I think Sal had probably sent him a tape or a CD of some like learn these songs.
Right.
And he didn't have the pipes for EF, and we were auditioning a lot of people at that time, and he was just, he kind of can't, but he's the only one that I really remembered because I had met him, and he was the Misfits guy, but then he wasn't, but then eventually he became that one.
That's a revelation. Like, I don't think that's known or talked about. I mean, obviously it's known by you and people, but like that is something that is never discussed or talked about, or
interesting.
Yeah, that kind of blows my mind here. That kind of blows my mind. So you did that. You were involved in that. Hold on, I'm just looking through my little notes. And then tell me, we talked about, or you mentioned that you were around for Samhain rehearsals in 2014.
Yeah.
To jump way ahead. What was that about? What's that like?
Well,
that must have been fun.
When they were coming back for the 30th
final bow,
the 30th anniversary of Initium.
Yep.
So it was early in the summer, and London had texted me to let me know that he says, I'm going to be out there rehearsing with Steve and Pete from Baroness for the upcoming shows.
Right.
And then he didn't really mention anything much about it, but then he texted me I think it was on a Monday. It was like after work or something. He's like, hey, we're at Backstage Studio tonight from 8 to 11. Why don't you come down?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. So went down there, picked up my friend Joe, went down there, and we walked through the door just as they were starting Samhain. So, we're coming down the hall, and I hear it, and I'm like, I just walked in, grabbed the mic, started singing. Did all of Initium, did pretty much everything. Initium, stuff from Unholy.
Really?
Yeah. We rehearsed for about 3 hours. I was the fill-in for Glenn.
That's amazing.
And then I missed the second night. I didn't come the second night. I totally blew my voice out. And then came back on the third night and rehearsed with them again. And then that was it for the rehearsals. The next time I saw them was the final show of that tour.
November 1st.
Yeah, in New York.
Which I almost went to it, and I had to make some choices, and I chose not to go. And I don't regret it because I got to see Samhain on the Danzig Legacy, and those were great shows. And
me and Haim saw them in '99 at the Electric Factory.
Oh yeah, that's recorded.
Yeah, and we were actually on stage for that. We were.
Oh really?
We were on stage left, I guess, for that show.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That, and there was a cover. They did a cover of Snakes of Christ with the girl from, her name's Gina. She's in Baroness. And she's like a crazy guitar maverick. I don't know what you'd call it. A crazy guitar slinger. And she's just got crazy chops. I'm going, God, like in a world where Tommy Victor no longer has the Danzig spot, like put her in.
I didn't know Tommy
awesome.
I didn't know Tommy.
No, he is. I'm saying in a world where Tommy is no longer the Danzig guitarist, put this Gina girl from Baroness in that slot because she could play all those John Christ parts.
No shit.
Yeah, she smokes the guitar, man. Like I can just imagine her, because I mean, some of those, and the thing about John Christ on guitar that made him such an amazing player is that, you know, he's finding these like pockets of time to do these like little leads and fills and things like in addition to doing all the rhythm stuff. It's almost like, you know, he's being the lead guitar player and the rhythm guitar player at the same time. I know that's like what you do when you're playing guitar.
Yeah.
I get that, but just like the idea of it almost feels like he's kind of like two guitar players in one in that band when you hear them live. And it's kind of hard to replicate. I feel like she just has the juice to do that.
You know, I had never heard of Baroness. Pete Adams was a really cool guy.
Yeah.
I had never heard of Baroness before, and I was always curious. I don't remember how he got that gig. I
Friends
don't
with Glenn.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't think I asked him. I think I may have asked London or Steve, and if they told me, I don't remember.
That's awesome, though.
So,
I mean,
yeah, but that was fun. That was fun. Doing that and hanging out with those guys, and being Glenn's fill-in for a couple of rehearsals.
Listen, we got to land this airplane because honestly, if we don't, we could literally talk about this forever. I know that you probably have work in the morning, and
I told you I could be a little long-winded.
No, but that's okay because we'll have you back in the future at some point when the opportunity presents itself. We'll have you and Haim on at the same time.
Oh, that would be awesome.
We'll do a show. It's got to be the right show. We'll figure it out.
Right.
We'll have you back because you rock, dude. But tell me, I want to know. Of course, thank you for coming on. I want to know a little bit more about the record label, guys. Check out Voice of Doom's Bandcamp down below. Give them a follow on Facebook, and check out the YouTube channel. Subscribe. I think I put that in the comments as well. I'm going to butcher the hell out of this. This is a really cool. Here's the thing. I love and I hate the name of your record label. I love it because I love the idea. I love what it stands for. Like, it's a really cool thing, but I hate saying the word and I hate spelling the word. So that's what I don't like about it.
I can't even spell it.
So you say the word and then tell me about it.
Pyrrhic Victory.
Pyrrhic Victory. And what is a Pyrrhic Victory by Greek history standards?
Explain. I'll be honest with you. I hate to sound like I'm not 100% sure. I think it may be like one of those things like you won a battle, but you didn't win the war. I don't know, honestly. And I'll tell you, everything to do with the record label is predominantly Joe's baby.
Okay.
It's Joe's baby. Joe, I have to, he worked his ass off to.
Thank you for clarifying.
To start it. To organize it, to run it, to promote it. It's a collective. It's not a record label. It's a
interesting.
Record collective.
Thank you for clarifying.
Because everybody does, whether it's, content, recording to put out, artwork. Haim is the in-house art director for Pyrrhic Victory. Kevin is the in-house engineer with the studio. A lot of our bands are either us rotating bands with the same guys and a couple of other people, or friends of ours, or old stuff that we did years ago that we're unearthing,
Interesting.
But, if you really would like to get in deep with the label, Joe Puggle is the guy to talk to because it's, he's 90% of it. And, I give him all the credit in the world for getting, because musicians are inherently lazy, as a lot of people know, but he's busted his ass on that for the last 10 or so years, and it's very good. He runs it, and that's his thing.
And I didn't know that. I didn't know it was a collective. That is awesome. What the victory is basically when you win your battle, but you win it at a cost that ultimately means you lost. Meaning that if your army is all destroyed, but you won the battle, what good is the win if your army is gone and you can't fight any more battles? So that's like it's an empty victory.
Like an empty victory, okay.
It's like an empty victory, basically.
And what's funny is Joe is the bass player in Voice of Doom, but he's not going to be at the show because he's going to be away that weekend.
Ah,
So our friend Ed, that plays in the 65s, and he's in Miss Ohio, other Pyrrhic
so
Victory
he's gonna fill.
bands.
He's gonna fill in.
He's playing with us. So if you wanted to talk to him about the label, he's not going to be at the show that night for you to do it.
Well, I'll tell you, we are going to have so much fun on November
Oh, I can't
6th.
wait.
It's going to be, we're going to have fun. We're going to eat pizza probably. We're going to be all just having a great time chumming it up.
We're going to level the place.
You're going to level the place. This is the VFW. This is Glenn's mother used to be very active at this VFW, man. It's crazy. She was very involved in that VFW, man. And now you guys are playing a show there. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it's going to be awesome.
I'm trying to think. Okay, here's how we're going to end this. We'll end it. We got to end. It's late anyway.
Yeah. It's late.
Dude, it's so nice to like meet and speak with you. Thank you for doing this. Truly, it's awesome.
Thank you.
Lot of revelations here. Definitely going to clip this video up. Like I was taking notating the time so I could remember where to find them, because I was like, oh, that's a video. That's a video. Let's end with your top 5 Misfits, Samhain, Danzig songs. I know that this can change all the time. So whatever it is right in this moment in your heart.
What do you mean? Like 15 songs, 5 from each individual band?
Yeah. Give me 5 songs. I know it's tough, but you gotta do it. Technically,
you know what's interesting, and we didn't even talk about the VOD cover of Wolf's Blood. But
let's do it. Let's do it real quick.
But wait, you did that with Haim, and
yeah,
I kind of wanted to stay there.
Okay, fine.
But if it wasn't going to be Wolf's Blood, my second choice for that would have been Hellhound, because it's just such a crazy song. I would have to say in my 5. It's hard to pick 5 favorite Misfit songs. I would have to say definitely Wolf's Blood is in there.
Yeah.
Wolf's Blood or Hellhound, depending on how I'm feeling. I don't know if I can have an A or a B in that. Definitely Hybrid Moments. Spinal Remains, definitely in there.
All great songs. Nothing you say is going to be wrong.
Death Comes Ripping is so I'd have to say Death Comes Ripping, Wolf's Blood, or Hellhound, Spinal Remains, Hybrid Moments, and probably something, the original Cough Cool.
Dude, great song.
I don't think that gets enough credit.
No, it does not.
For what it is. I love Manny's drums on that. I love the jazzy style. The original that song to me just captures. When I worked my way backwards and found out that was like their first recorded song, I'm like, I thought it was great. I thought it's still in my top 5 for Misfits. For Samhain, I would definitely have to go with the song Samhain as being my favorite, without a doubt. Samhain. I love In My Grip.
Oh, great song. Makes you just want to fuck shit up.
Halloween, their version of Halloween 2 is, especially live, definitely without a doubt. Archangel.
Great.
I got to go with that. And if I have to go one more, I think I did 4. I got to go one more. I'm probably going to go Moribund, believe it or not.
Yeah. Oh, great song.
Because when I heard Moribund live, I was blown away by it. Like, it definitely didn't sound like the record, so that instantly became one of my favorite Samhain songs. As far as Danzig goes, that's a tough one. Definitely Blood and Tears, like we discussed earlier. I would have to say Left Hand Black is one of my favorite.
Great song.
The sound of it is just the way it's attacked. Love Left Hand Black. So what did I say? Blood and Tears, Left Hand Black. I got 3 more.
3 more.
I love anything. I love that's one thing. That's
track
one thing.
2. Track 2 on How the Gods Kill.
I love anything. Long Way Back from Hell. Godless. I love Godless.
Godless. Best opener.
Yeah. My wait a minute. Brand New God. I know that's more than 5, but definitely Brand New
okay.
God.
You've one bonus. That's your bonus.
My low power mode just came on, so my phone's gonna die soon.
That's okay, because we're done here. Hey Tanner, check this out. Look at this. Look at this little sucker. I want to thank John of Doom so much for coming on here. I mean, this was such a spectacular episode.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, so many interesting revelations. We'll be chopping this episode for clips. We'll definitely have them back. Check out all the links down below. Check out the show November 6th. I'm the MC. I'm like the host. I don't know what the fuck I'm going to say. I'm going to say some shit. I'm going to wear a cape. I need to wear a cape. I'm gonna have some fangs. I think I got to do that. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, well, Heim gave you fangs in the flyer, so you got to.
Right, I got to do it. I love that flyer. I want to get that framed. That flyer is so awesome. He just did that. Like he took all the. I didn't give him any of those elements. He just did it, and he just did such a great job.
He sent me the first one without the fangs, and then like 5 minutes later, he sent me another one that says fangs.
Yeah, I mean, come on, like it's such an obvious thing. Listen, his phone is going to die, and I want to talk to him off air. So we're going to wrap this up. We have a nice way of closing out. We say peace and hair grease. Ah, what is that? Oh my God, it's a pumpkin again. All right, and we're going to end it with the Patreon. Check out the Patreon if you want to hear November Coming Fire early. Stick around, John, for 1 second right after this.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jeff. So I've decided to make a Patreon. What is Patreon? I don't know how to define a Patreon. Let me look it up. Patreon is a membership platform that makes it very easy for creators to get paid for the things that they're already creating. I want to do it full time. I want this to be my full-time job. In my efforts to make that happen, I've set up this platform. Is it going to work? Is it going to be successful? I don't know, but I would rather try and crash and burn than not try at all. The goal is to create enough passive revenue so that I can continue to do this full-time, uninterrupted. Why? Because I love to do this. I love creating content. I love making videos. I love shooting films. I love doing podcasts. In case you couldn't tell, I love to talk and I never shut the fuck up. So right now I've kept the Patreon incredibly simple. There's 2 tiers, and that may change in the future. The Murdergram is a simple way to extend support for all of the hours and hours of free content on the channel for nothing more than $1. 38 cents goes to Patreon. What's $1.38, eh? It's less than a cup of coffee, but it's a great way that you can show support for very little effort. When you divide that $1.38 by the hours and hours and hours of time spent listening to this endless drivel of content, the dollar cost average works out. Next up is the YouTube Casualty for $6.66. The YouTube Casualty is loaded to the gills. Enjoy the archive ad-free, as well as ad-free early access to special docu-style podcast videos, music reaction commentaries, and the like, a month before they drop on YouTube, loaded with ads, I might add. You're also going to get exclusive content and behind-the-scenes content that is not available on YouTube or anywhere else. So you get to peek behind the veil. And believe me, there's a couple of choice pieces. Most of all, more than anything, whether you join the Patreon or not, I just want to thank each and every one of you that comes to the channel, that watches all the shows, that leaves comments, that participates, that subscribes. That's really the most important thing. This is just trying to find a way to earn a living as an artist. And with that, thank you for my TED Talk. Join the Patreon, because we need you! 66 cents.